know talk about this, and I told Steve.
Right.
You'll rent to me.
You know, we paid for this report.
Okay, if we could all grab a seat, please. Oh, we could grab our seats, please. All right. Great. Thanks very much. And thanks at home for watching. We're here tonight to have a discussion that is the result of the Portsmouth Listens process involving the middle school. Before that, though, we have something to celebrate involving the recently completed girls lacrosse team, which just won the state championship in Portsmouth. This is definitely the fun part of the job. At any rate, we've got a proclamation to celebrate that, and then we have many of the athletes here this evening. And after we do the proclamation, we'll have the athletes and the coaches here as well. We have separate awards as well as T-shirts. So first, the proclamation, however. Whereas the Portsmouth High School girls varsity lacrosse team has won the 2007 New Hampshire Division III championship. And whereas this is the first state title in the young history of the PHS girls lacrosse program. And whereas under the direction of varsity head coach Cindy Fitzgerald, these young women have displayed great determination and dedication in pursuit of winning a state crown. And whereas their 2007 state championship victory capped a perfect 16-0 season. That's worth a couple of whereases right there. And whereas the squad's 4 seniors, 6 juniors, 8 sophomores, and 2 freshmen have written another exciting chapter in our city's long history of Clipper pride. Now, therefore, I, Steve Marchand, Mayor of the City of Portsmouth, do hereby join with the members of the City Council and the citizens of Portsmouth in congratulating the 2007 PHS Girls Lacrosse Team on an outstanding season and a well-deserved state championship title. And I'm not sure who will grab that on the way up along with the other spoils of victory here, but we'll begin, and I will begin by reading some of the student athletes here. If you could come up, accept your award. Maybe I see the cue back there. You can come up a little bit closer. The dramatic entrance. There we go. There we go, and the award, the T-shirt, and then if you want to line up here, all the folks at home can see the team. Let me start with Callie Aspinwall. Brittany Conway. Allie Donnermeyer. Molly Dupree. Hannah Ferris. Alexandra Kamakis. Thank you. Hannah Kin. Meredith Legg. Dana Magnan. Eva Malone. Alexandra Marusik. Catherine Nadolny. Kaylee Nevin. Tabor Pope. Mary Quill. Marissa Riley. Maya Sherborough. Lyndall Snow. Melissa Stanwood. Samantha Whitney. Assistant coach, John Strader. And last and certainly not least, the varsity coach, state champion, Cindy Fitzgerald. Now, ladies and gentlemen, your state champion.
On behalf of the girls varsity lacrosse, we'd like to thank you for inviting us here today. These girls have worked, actually since day one, they came together for tryouts, wanting it internally for themselves to win the state championship. We had lost in double overtime last year, and they all came back saying that's not going to happen again. Our goal obviously wasn't to go undefeated, but taking it one game at a time and giving it 100%. We did go undefeated and ended up winning the state championship. With that said, all state nominations just came out, and 5 players on our team for the first time in Portsmouth history made first team, which is pretty much half the team. So 5 of our players, 1 of our players made second team. For the first time in Portsmouth history, we've nominated players for All-American, as well as had players make the Vermont-New Hampshire team, as well as we sent 2 players down to the national tournament a couple weeks ago, and we had 1 player, our senior, Britt Conway, who played on the this national senior tournament team and was a national all-star. So we've come a long way in our 6 years, and these girls from the start wanted it, and for themselves just came out and wanted it. It was John and I working together, but they each day gave 100%. So. It's congratulations to them, and thank you so much for having us here, and all the support from the community. We could feel it. The newspaper articles were wonderful, and just having community support means so much to these student athletes. So thank you, and keep it up. Thank you very much.
Anybody? I suspected there was at least one more, but there was that feel. There you go.
Just behalf on the captains and the entire team, we would just like to thank the community for all your support you've given us throughout our whole season. From the newspaper articles to the fans coming out, we really appreciate everything you've done for us, and we really couldn't have won it without the local support. So thank you very much.
Mr. Restano, as you may or may not remember, I represented you on Student Government Day, and I believe you made a little promise that if we were to win the state championships, you would shave your head.
It would be my honor to absolutely do that for the girls across.
What's he gonna say?
And let me tell you, Brendan, it's not so bad. Anybody else make any wagers we should know about? This is very exciting. If that's it, thank you guys again. Do it again next year. Thanks. Give everybody a second here to exit.
It'll all be gone for our next meeting.
It started on a positive note.
That's it. That's it.
School board.
Have the AC cranked up.
Yeah, that too.
Get some pictures from Ronnie.
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
You didn't promise him a tattoo.
I got it. I'll go down there myself.
No, no.
All right.
I talked to him.
I wouldn't be able to go home if I promised him that one. So.
I said, John told you I talked to him about it, didn't he? He goes, well, he didn't seem like he did. I said, trust me, I did. I said, it'll get taken care of.
Do it every
I
year
had
in
my
high
hands
school.
Okay.
everywhere. I was on the way in.
And he ambushed him.
All right.
Fine, but it was a little convoluted.
As you know, many of you here, in addition to that, are here to hear from the, I believe, 16 groups that participated in the Portsmouth Listens component of what has become a community-wide discussion about the middle school. One thing I want to do very briefly is just to give some context in terms of where we are, the school board, city council's role, where we are this evening. The school board eventually, at a date that is not yet set, it is not something that had to or is set in stone, will eventually deliberate and have a vote as to a proposed location for a middle school, whatever that may be. This precedes that, and this is part of our process in getting the information and making the best decision possible. So the school board deliberates and votes. Only after that does the city council deliberate and vote on the bond issue off of the decision that the school board makes. So just to make sure that people understand the policy component of the decision, the school board will eventually do that, and then the city council will play the important role of discussing the thumbs up or thumbs down on the bond issue. You can, I know Kent, who is here this evening as the school board chair, Kent LePage, is here as well, and I know that Jim Nukas is here. I believe that you are going to be starting it off in terms of presenting, or John will be. Okay, John Tabor is here as well. So there'll be questions at the end. We are doing 8 minutes per group, and obviously with 16 groups, that's not an inconsequential amount of time. What we're going to do is, I believe, at a certain mark prior to the 8 minutes, I want to make sure we understand it. What time?
Well, we have the 30-second sign from the council meeting, so that will mean the 2 minutes, I think.
Okay, yeah. Disregard the fact that it actually says 30 seconds on it.
And then the versatile thank you sign here.
That works for all time limits. So basically, when you see the time limit sign, that means you have 2 minutes to go. And at the 8-minute mark, especially for those that would be presenting towards the end of this 16 group, please consider them. And when you see that thank you sign, please finish up, and I'll try to keep you on task for that. So with that, we'll begin. I believe that John Tabor, representing Portsmouth Listens, will begin this process, and we'll go from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll try and be as brief as possible to not get between you and the presentations that are headed your way shortly. A few thank yous, especially to the council and the school board for your willingness to allow citizens to participate in this very important question. In April, we sent out mailers to the entire city, and we also used school emails to ask if people wanted to participate in study circles about the middle school question. The question was, as you know, what criteria should be incorporated into our city's plans to improve the educational facilities for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. 170 people signed up, 171 people signed up to participate, and 135 made it through all 4 study circles. I also given you a corrected version of the summary to both council and school board members because I incorrectly stated 107 made it through the process. It's 135. It was 107 who completed the surveys. That's very strong participation for a city our size, and they did a tremendous amount of work, as you're about to see. 2 other points. Study circles are not a referendum. Every group did not come to a consensus, and they didn't have to. The differing opinions are captured in their final reports, which they're about to present to you. And I think you'll hear in those differing reports respect for the other point of view. And I'd urge all our participants tonight to keep that same respect for the other point of view as we go through the report outs in the next hour or 2. Thanks also to Superintendent Bob Lister and City Manager John Bohenko, and to Alan Brady, the city's webmaster, for making all the documents available that the study circles used and for answering many, many questions during the process. I can tell you that those resources were extensively used and were terrific for getting all the facts into the discussion. We also want to thank Steve Parkinson and Dave Allen, who led tours of the Sagamore Creek site for a lot of the study circle participants. And I want to thank Mary Salmon, my assistant, who did a lot of the correspondence with all of the study circle participants. Last but not least, our wonderful facilitators, volunteers who were trained to work with each study circle and help them complete their mission and answer the question. Our facilitators were Ann Lynch, Beth Lambert, Jack Jameson, Jennifer Meister, Lori Waltz-Gagnon, Leo Gagnon, Teresa Garabedian, Dave Cohen, ML Henne, Nancy Craig, Sherry Brensma, Paula Glynn, Bert Cohen, and Sherry Donnemeyer. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
Thank you, John. There's one other person I'd like to introduce and thank. That's Kim O'Connell. Would you stand up, Kim? Kim is from the Portsmouth Listens Steering Committee. And she was also very helpful in organizing the groups with us and making sure things were taken care of on a day-to-day basis over the internet and by being at the sessions. I would like to join John in thanking everyone who has participated in the process or otherwise done some of the many things that were necessary to make it possible. It was an enormous undertaking geared towards creating a synergy that would allow people with differing views to get together and work towards a common solution. As in the past, the purpose of the study circles is to provide you, the decision makers, with quality information that comes from a deliberative process. As you've heard from the numbers, the people who participated in the study circle worked extremely hard. They often put in more than 2 hours a week beyond the 2-hour sessions they attended, and they worked with one of the largest databases ever assembled for study circle purposes in the country. I think you'll see that the quantity and quality of information available and the diligence of the participants will be well reflected in the presentations that you'll receive tonight. As we said at the kickoff approximately 6 weeks ago, a study circle is not a referendum or a poll. It is a marketplace within which ideas are tested, and groups then tell you those ideas that carried the day by consensus or a majority, by vote or some other process that each group would decide on. The group reports do not necessarily represent the views of each and every member in the group. They do reflect those ideas and criteria that were most commonly accepted by group members through the process of consensus or some form of vote. They are the ideas that persuaded a specific group to arrive at its list of criteria, the reasoning behind that criteria, and how the criteria would impact the ultimate choice. In looking over those reports as they came in, I had to fight off a tendency that I have at work. As an attorney, I often get decisions in the mail from the court or administrative agencies. My tendency is to open them up and look at the last page and figure out whether we won or lost. But I hope you'll not engage in a similar tendency when you take a look at these reports, because they're not about winning or losing. Don't just turn to the last page to find out what the ultimate opinion is. You, the City Council and School Board, have not delegated your authority to make the ultimate decision. You have retained that authority, and as always, you have the obligation to exercise that authority in a responsible way. In fact, I think the best way that you can honor the work that's been done by all of these people here tonight is by reading their reports and listening to their presentations with an open mind. Then afterwards, go back, either individually or collectively, and establish your own list of criteria. Put off the ultimate decision. Look at the criteria that are most important to you. Sort them out. Write them down. Look at them, and then apply them to the options and see where you end up. I hope that over the next couple of months of your deliberations, you will work together on this issue with the same spirit and intent that one participant described in a recent email to us about his study circle experience. That email reads, "Just a note to let you know that the study circle experience for the last 4 weeks was rewarding. I was somewhat neutral going into the process, but I frankly had great reservations as to whether or not a dozen strangers could come together and develop a consensus. That is indeed what happened after a great deal of give and take, but always with respect and courtesy for all participants. It was a great experience and increased my faith in human nature and the citizens of Portsmouth." Tonight, all groups will present. After the groups are done presenting, there will be an opportunity for City Council and school board members to ask questions. The questions will be addressed to the individual presenters. As each group comes up, they'll introduce the presenter for that group. And let us now proceed with the presentations. We'll start off with Group L.
Good evening, everyone. We will try to keep to our 8 minutes, we promise. My name is Heather Hurt.
And I'm Terry Widener-Dallin, and we want to say thank you to Portsmouth Listens for letting us participate in this fascinating process.
Our group that lived near Jones Avenue, as well as downtown. We also had parents and non-parents in our group.
Participants came from a diverse variety of backgrounds. We had a town planner, we had teacher, an athletic coach, an environmental scientist, and a business consultant. So we had quite a lively conversation.
So why don't we get started? Spokane, Washington. San Antonio, Texas. Boise, Idaho. You might be sitting there wondering what all these cities have in common. Well, what they have in common is that these cities overcame major obstacles to the preservation and modernization of older, valued, historic neighborhood schools. We're going to pass those case studies out to you right now. And our group unanimously came to the decision that we wanted to recommend to all of you that the city of Portsmouth join those visionary cities and renovate the Portsmouth Parrott Avenue Middle School. We're going to touch on a couple things this evening: our guiding principles, our 5 criteria, and then our conclusion and next steps. Starting with our guiding principles, we came up with 2 guiding principles that really drove the creation of our criteria. Number 1, that was to follow the master plan, and number 2 was to demonstrate fiscal responsibility. In terms of the master plan, which I've got a copy of right here, our group really believed that following the master plan shows that the city of Portsmouth is really showing true leadership, that it shows that the city is going to retain its core values and its unique historic identity, and also put us on course for a successful and vibrant future. We've looked through the master plan. We've put all the excerpts of those sections in our report, and these tabs really represent all those sections. And I can tell you, as many of you, as you read through it, will find that all of these support the renovation of the Parrott Avenue Middle School. Moving on to demonstrating fiscal responsibility. What do we mean by that? Number 1, our group felt it was really important to obtain multiple design and construction bids, not only during the feasibility part of this project, but going thereafter. And the reason it was so important, we felt, in the feasibility part was because we find that a lot of that information that Team Design did is driving a lot of discussion, a lot of decisions. And so the community, at least our group, would have liked to have seen more design options and bids during that phase as well, to really make us feel like we're being fiscally responsible. Number 2, our group felt there was a big difference between firms that specialize in historic school renovation and new school construction. And we urge, the school board and city council to look at those specific firms. We've referenced some of those in our report. And finally, to really identify and leverage shared financial efficiencies through shared resources. So an example of this would be the along Parrott Avenue. Why not take that parking for school employees during school hours? Maybe then we don't have to have as many parking spots behind the school. So again, looking at how can we use resources that we already have existing in our community. So 2 guiding principles: follow the master plan, demonstrate fiscal responsibility.
All right, now for the second item on our agenda, which are our 5 criteria. The first was environmental impact. The second, a sense of community. The third, urban sprawl impact. The fourth, optimal learning environment. And the fifth, healthy and safe environments. Dealing with the first, limiting negative environmental impacts. The Parrott Avenue site limits negative environmental impacts. Renovating Parrott Avenue presents an opportunity for Portsmouth to demonstrate leadership and a commitment to sound environmental stewardship. The Parrott Avenue site would generate less greenhouse gas emissions because it is walkable, which of course means less buses and cars are necessary. Plus, 10 years from now, global warming issues will be standard fare in school curriculum. The newly renovated Parrott Avenue site should be energy efficient and meet LEED standards. Maintaining the Parrott Avenue School will help preserve the beautiful, historic built environment of downtown Portsmouth that we all love so much. And lastly, retaining the Parrott Avenue site means that open space, and in particular, important natural resources like our creek marshland, wildlife habitat, and vernal pools will be preserved.
Okay, moving on to number 2, we have 30 seconds.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Thank you, Steve. Oh my goodness. Heart attack, heart attack. Okay. The Parrott Avenue site preserves and nurtures a sense of community. How does it do this? Well, we're going to maintain walkability. That's a cornerstone of the master plan. We're going to stay close to community institutions like Strawberry Bank, like the Children's Museum's moving, but other institutions like the Music Hall. One of the key points we thought was interesting is we're going to integrate kids with the multi-generational community if we keep the site over at Parrott Ave. And why is that important? Well, that's going to motivate taxpayers to support the school budget. It's actually going to put a face on the school budget, because if you see kids walking around downtown, you're going to be more likely to support programs like the Strings program and things like that. Finally, it's going to teach kids about historic preservation, and that's going to inspire them to support Portsmouth and its goal to become unique and keep historic in the future. We're going to try to move it along. Keep going.
Number 3, urban sprawl impact. The Parrott Avenue site would revisit Portsmouth's pre-World War II environment, which was characterized by a compact city center, pedestrian amenities, fewer cars, and an abundance of open space. The Parrott Avenue site lessens pressure on urban green space. Group L strongly opposes encroachment on the Alumni Field Pierce land. And this was a big debate because a lot of people thought that by doing that, we were eliminating Parrott Avenue from our criteria or as a possible site. However, we feel that if we get a good architectural firm in there with a good design, that using that land would not be necessary, and it becomes a moot point. So with correct design, we can achieve first-class renovation without sacrificing this green space. The Parrott Avenue site can easily accommodate the demographic projections, which point to a continued decline in enrollment over the long term. I'm going to read a quick quote from the Eagle Tribune, May 31st, 2007. It says, quote, Granite State now ranks 3rd from rock bottom among the states with the lowest percentage of preschoolers. And to continue, the state's shrinking school-age population comes as news to local school leaders. Although the number of children living in New Hampshire has been dropping since 2000, most administrators said they haven't seen any trend toward smaller enrollments. So in conclusion, let's not overbuild.
Okay, I'm going to whiz through this last one. Actually, can I just finish? No? Real little, okay. We're just going to jump to our conclusion, which is we want to recommend renovating Parrott Avenue. We'd like the school board to identify architectural firms that specialize in historic school renovation, get some multiple designs and construction estimates, and make the process transparent and open with the community. Why, sitting there on the school board, should you do this? We think it's going to restore the community's confidence in the school board process. We think it's going to ensure that all renovation designs are fully explored, and finally, that we remain fiscally responsible. Thank you.
One thing I would just note, and I apologize in advance because this probably won't be the only time, is the advantage of being early in this is that you don't have to wait till 9:30 to make your thoughts heard. The disadvantage is that a lot of the things you'll say will be the first time it's heard early on, which means you're going to be trying to jam a lot in 8 minutes. So keep in mind, especially as things begin to be repeated or similar, it's okay to say, we shared the earlier expressed feelings of, and that buys you more time to get into unique things that you might have to say from your group. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, mayors and members of the board. Thank you. My name is Gary Epler. I'm the representative of Group N. Group N's members are there. It's notable that we had several members who were teachers, both current and retired, a member who was a civil engineer, another member, construction manager, and several of our members have families with children who will probably be entering the middle school at about the time that many of the decisions that you're making will be taking effect, so we'll be affected by those decisions. With that, I'll get right into the heart. These were our top 5 criteria, and they are reflected in the report that you have, so I won't repeat them here. In terms of the first one, community, what we were really looking at in terms of this criteria was really is both what's the physical center in order to try to minimize transportation costs for all. So that's the center of community is the place that will do that. The other is really what's the heart of the community, what's the profile of the community, what does the community look like, and what then should be reflected in the important buildings. I think if you look at traditional communities, all the important buildings were located in the city center or the downtown area. I mean, even on the westerns that we grew up with, that's where the courthouse was, where the post office was, the schools, the saloons, so on. And there's a reason for that, because that draws the attention of the community to its center. Here, and also I just forgot to mention that our group did reach a unanimous consensus on our recommendation, and so my comments do reflect that. In terms of our analysis, the Parrott Avenue location, the current location, is really established currently in the center of the community. The bus routes have already been established. It's a central point, so it increases the likelihood of being walkable or bikeable to the students. It's also located next to the library, which is a key resource that is wonderful for a school to have access to. The Sagamore Creek site, we felt was disconnected from the center of the community. It increases barriers for those who would want to walk or bike. It increases distance from the downtown and the library, increases reliance on cars, and also it puts traffic in a major corridor or major corridors, contrary to the goal of the master plan. Yes, okay, I'll come closer to the mic. The second criteria, design and construction costs, and I think this kind of speaks for itself, but it's really whether or not you have before you an accurate appraisal of the alternatives that you're looking at, something that you can rely on. And unfortunately, at least in terms of the conclusion our group reached, we felt that you do not. And the basic reason for that was something reflected in the past group, and that's that the process did not have two groups, two design teams looking at the two alternatives that you're looking at. We think that this is a major flaw, because with one group looking at two sites, we all felt that you couldn't help but have that one team bias in favor of one site or another. Or it's possible that we feel that something like a renovation requires a certain amount of expertise and experience, and it's not clear whether or not that was reflected in the team that was chosen. The other thing is that we felt that very strongly that each site needs an advocate, someone who really comes forward and strongly advocates for that site and points out the positive qualities. And this should be reflected through in terms of one of the issues that is at the Parrott Avenue site, and that is the fact that you have a transition issue. And that's a critical issue that many people in the community have pointed out to us. What do you do during that period of time, whether it's a year and a half, 2 years, when you'd be renovating? What is the burden on the teachers and on the students? And this is a very valid concern, and so that should be part of the charge to the design team that's looking at renovation. They should come forward, and as part of their plan, here is how you do the transition. This is how you minimize the possible ill effects or the disruption to the community during that period. Also in terms of designs, we felt that the Sagamore Creek site presented more unknowns, and certain costs were either not estimated or ignored, in particular the amount of ledge that would need to be removed to make the site accessible. The third issue is safety. Here you're looking at really several criteria: traffic, the location near the high school, location near the landfill. In terms of traffic, as I said before, again, if you're at the Sagamore Creek site, you're adding traffic to major corridors, which again the master plan wanted to try to avoid. You're also increasing the time period during the day. Even if you stagger the dismissal or the beginning of the classes, then you're adding the time period during the day when those traffic corridors have heavy traffic. You raise issues in terms of if there's a need for an evacuation, you have much less access, limited access, again, dumping onto major traffic routes. Here with the current site in the middle school, you have established traffic patterns. You have a neighborhood that is used to having that school there, and so you have a history. The landfill presents a lot of unknowns. I won't speak to any specific issues there, but certainly there are many, many unknowns with building at or near a landfill site. Impact upon students and teachers. The major focus of this issue for us was really the construction and the transition, and looking at short-term costs and benefits versus long-term costs and benefits. And clearly, again, as I mentioned before, short-term costs and benefits, transition, that is a concern. And clearly, if you're building off-site, so you could stay at school with no disruptions, the other site shows up more favorable on this. But again, we feel that issue, the transition, has not been looked at creatively, and we think that there are many creative solutions for that, and also that other communities have gone through this and have felt that it's been a worthwhile endeavor. Land issues. There are a number of issues, but really on this we felt consistently that it's really keeping the middle school at the current location, satisfy all those criteria. It develops a current historic property within the city's center. It preserves wetland and conservation land. It avoids adding to sprawl. It minimizes reliance on cars. It avoids adding to traffic along a congested corridor. Key observations and conclusions. First is that we felt that at this point that there wasn't really an adequate investigation or due diligence, and it wasn't apparent to us. This is based on the information that was given to us and what we had access to. And it was not apparent what the criteria was that had been used to analyze this situation up to this point. So it was helpful for us because we came up with the criteria. Second, we thought it's very important that community center, the preservation of historic Portsmouth, be a preeminent guide, and that the master plan should be looked to. Third, critical to have separate design teams advocate on behalf of each site. And fourth is that really that this process can be a very much unifying process for the city. That if you look at the excitement that was generated at the renovation of the North Church steeple and the Wentworth Hotel, the community really came out and really followed those projects, and it was a unifying process for the community at large, and also for those outside the community to follow those and see how they develop. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you to Portsmouth Listens, our elected officials before us, our Group M team members, including Roy, our facilitator, for allowing us the chance to make our voices heard. Can you hear me okay? Our group's top five criteria were these. Let's go on and we'll get into them in more detail. Our group believed the above criteria should be our top priorities because the middle school needs to remain a central part of the community of Portsmouth, and the middle school must work both for the students and citizens of the city. Legitimate and thorough process. We felt the entire process involved in selecting a middle school site was not thorough enough and therefore not legitimate. If there are no competitive bids at this earlier stage for a multi-million-dollar school project, if different items are not consistently costed for the different sites, such as new roads, new sidewalks, and land taking were admitted from the Sagamore Creek site proposal, if the demographics of declining student enrollment is ignored, if the ability and level of being a LEED certified school is questionable but not clarified for the Sagamore site, if the one design team hired for estimates specializes in new construction and not renovating older classic structures, then how can we, as concerned tax-paying citizens, be assured that the money spent is truly the smartest investment for this community? Our principal priorities was the Sagamore Creek site directly contradicts the Portsmouth Master Plan, and these are some of the actual goals. Goal CH-1. Identify and preserve buildings, streetscapes, and open spaces that contribute to the unique character and cultural aspects of Portsmouth. Goal NR-1. Develop and promote an approach to natural resource protection and planning that is based on watershed boundaries, wildlife habitat areas, and open space corridors. Goal NR-3. Maintain and improve the quality of wetland and waterfront areas. With these said, if we build a new site, we've got 33 acres gone, downtown vitality completely ignored. New construction design would mean a nondescript and have no architectural history or meaning. Be cognizant of other city projects. There are so many other priorities within the city plan that need to be noted and have to be accounted for. Upgrades to the water and sewer department, repairs, renovations, improvements to fire and police departments, public work updates. School board and city have not priced out the full costs the taxpayers and city will be bearing choosing one site over another. For example, if we build at Sagamore Creek, the ultimate cost of maintenance and future renovation for the Parrott Avenue building still exists. Taxpayers will still be responsible for this. The vacant Lafayette School, the old library, too many city-owned sites still vacant. Both Jones Avenue and Lafayette Road costs for the school entrances are not factored yet. Additional fuel costs for busing, plowing, road maintenance, and long-term landfill monitoring factored in the budget for Sagamore Creek. There are no hidden costs for the existing school. We already know what the budget has been. Inability to include these and many other equally significant costs in the comparative analysis of both sites delegitimizes the entire process. In addition, many of the pending costs above are not eligible for reimbursement from the state for this school project. In-town versus outskirts. The current location has provided quality education to students for 75 years. Close proximity to the new library and the cultural resources we cherish in town. Accessibility for students that walk or bike. This isolated location out at Sagamore Creek reduces student safety before, during, and after school. Lack of safe and direct access route to the site via Jones Avenue or Lafayette. The increased risk of deviant behavior because the eyes of the community are not watching over the students as they have been for years here in town. Building a school out on a remote location encourages the urban sprawl mentality. Longevity and versatility of the school, building, and fields. The middle school project must meet the middle school educational narrative, changing educational philosophies over time. Follow the child and holistic educational initiatives are critical to the future development and success of our children. New Hampshire Department of Education representatives clearly indicate that both proposals would be granted the needed waivers, regardless of site selection. Creatively modifying the Parrott Avenue site design meets the needs of teachers and students and this educational narrative. Need for additional athletic fields in the city. Please research the other 12 sites and other city land for field use only. Avoid destroying wetlands, forests, ledge, and vernal pool habitats. Fifth, our long-lasting impact and temporary inconvenience. The decision to renovate or build a new school should not be based on a temporary inconvenience to the students, teachers, administrators, or parents. This is a long-term investment in the future of our school system, students, and city development. The short-term inconvenience of alternative classroom arrangements should not deter from making the decision to renovate. It is not acceptable to build a new school simply because it's easier for a 2-year time frame. The final site selection is just that, final. So by building and paving over green space, it has gone forever, and the impact of the wildlife, land, water, and its citizens is long-lasting and permanent. And just for other considerations, the landfill closeout documentation from 1987 was capped and closed with an original intent of creating open space park land, not a school and an athletic field complex. There's no recent outside studies or proposed budget to clarify the future environmental impact of this building on a landfill next to the estuary, children running on these playing fields, and what happens when the landfill and surrounding land is disturbed by heavy equipment. Other input that we have for the school board, to consider a downtown middle school campus. Convert the overloaded senior center on Parrott Avenue into a middle school facility. Call it a cultural center, music center, science lab, art center. Move the senior center to another available, more spacious city building, the old library. It has handicap accessible, it has an elevator. Or the Lafayette School. If parking is an issue, make a lot next to the courthouse permit only, September to June, for the middle school, library staff, courthouse employees, and various legal officials only. Give employees of downtown businesses, the employees a permit for discounted parking in the parking garage. Come summer, all is open again to the tourists. This will enable the field next to the school to be saved for what it was intended. Apply the green infrastructure policy to the Sagamore Creek land so that it is managed properly. Consider the vernal pool results still not released. Keep in mind that the Sagamore Creek was originally purchased with a grant from the Land and Water Conservation Fund. If the National Park Service grants a conversion, this land loss can't equally be replaced elsewhere in the city. In our conclusion, our group feels the school board and city could come to a cohesive agreement to renovate the existing Parrott Avenue site so that it balances the educational needs of our students, adheres to preserving the sense of community that the downtown location provides, and protects Sagamore Creek for the future enjoyment of Portsmouth citizens for generations to come. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, what was her name?
Oh.
Her name for the last group?
Sorry, who was that made the presentation? Yep.
Oh, sorry. Mary Lewis? Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, that's a good point. For all future speakers, if you could just give your name or names, if they're multiple, that'd be great.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. 7:24.
Timing purposes, this is two groups.
Oh, okay.
Oh, because there were two separate groups.
Okay, so they get 16 minutes? Okay, got it.
They did.
Good evening. We are 4 student representatives from Portsmouth High School who participated in Portsmouth Listens. During 2 sessions, 2 hour-and-a-half sessions, two groups compiled lists of what we thought were the top criteria. Group A will go first, and thank you.
Hi, my name is Gallagher Hogan. This is my partner, Lisa Allard. And our study circle decided that the most important factors in determining where the middle school should be placed are accessibility, traffic and safety, the adequacy of the athletic fields, the impact on students, the environmental impact, and the overall quality of the facility.
How accessible the middle school is has a strong impact on where the facility should be placed. Middle school students don't drive, and therefore many of them walk, and there needs to be a good sidewalk system that leads to the school that's safe. Also, many students get driven by their parents, so there has to be a good drop-off system, and also for buses. And for accessibility, the last factor we have for that is the fire and police department need to be able to access the school easily without hitting lots of traffic. Along with a good school comes a good athletic program. There needs to be athletic fields for the gym classes and the growing students in the middle school. But along with having good athletic fields, we need to also think about the the environmental impact of the placement of these athletic fields. During the building process, we need a school that won't disrupt our students very much, so the learning can still continue. But looking into the future, we need to fill a facility that is up to date, easily accessible, close to resources, and part of the community. Being an environmentally friendly community, we need to see ahead the impact our environment would take. Portsmouth prides itself in the amount of open space we have for the size of our city. We have many trees and wetlands that could be threatened by roads, pollution, and traffic in the future.
I'm going to go through the Jones Avenue site and how the 5 criteria apply. The plan for Sagamore Creek would only have one road leading to it, and this road would go off Route 1, making it hard to access in busy mornings and afternoon traffic, and it'd make it very dangerous. The road would be very close to the high school entrance, and in the mornings and afternoons it's extremely busy for the high school students alone, let alone all of the middle school students. The fields at Sagamore would be awesome. Although the roadway would cut off 2 current high school soccer field and softball field, but the new fields would be pretty nice. It's almost not fair to the high school students who would lose 2 very valuable fields to the middle school students. If the new middle school were built at Jones Avenue, then there would be zero affliction to the current students at the middle school. The only change they would have to endure would be the move to the new middle school. At Jones Avenue, there would be many trees that would be cut down in order to build a new school. Portsmouth is known for its open space and would be cutting down on this. There would in fact be new trees planted, and the building would be extremely environmentally friendly with all the new technology. The new building at Sagamore Creek would be great. However, the technology could be the same in both possible locations for Portsmouth Middle School, so the point about quality of the facility wouldn't be a huge deciding factor in this decision.
And now I'm going to talk about the Parrott Avenue site. Parrott Avenue is easy to get to. It's accessible from almost any direction, and there's many roads that lead to it with sidewalks on almost every side of it. The current site also overlooks the fire and police station, so help in the case of an emergency is only a block away, and the fire and police departments can easily get to the school without hitting any traffic. Parrott Avenue has basketball and tennis courts and baseball fields right directly across from it. So because the school is smaller, there are less children that do sports in the middle school, so these can easily be used for gym classes and for other sports. For Parrott Avenue, the students could be placed into modular homes during the building process, and while this is a minor disruption and it might not be quite as easy to teach there, it's manageable. For years, the mill pond right across from the middle school has been used by science classes for research about their environment, and also it's just a few blocks away from historic downtown that would serve as an excellent look onto the history of our city. At Parrott Avenue, there wouldn't be very many trees that would need to be cut down, and no roads would need to be built through forests and wetlands, and there's nothing nearby that could be potentially harmful to the students. The current facility is a beautiful site from outside. Its over 70-year-old structure fits perfectly into the unique downtown Portsmouth, and the facility should be used as what it was meant for, a place of scholars, instead of being vacant for years with question as to what would happen to the school. The new plan for the renovation of the middle school would host all necessities. It would have a gymnasium, cafeteria, classrooms, bathrooms, hallways, and even an auditorium. The current middle school site is the perfect location with plenty of outside resources for more opportunities to learn as well. With newer technology and an up-to-date school, the quality of education would improve tremendously. And along with having a good facility inside, the exterior of the building would still maintain its original beauty.
Now our group took a poll, and on the 5 criteria that would apply to both locations, we concluded that the renovation on Parrott Avenue would be able to fulfill the criteria, whereas Jones Avenue falls short.
Hi, my name is Sarah Federo, and this is Jamie Freilich. Really quickly, can everybody who has a student currently in the middle school, well, this past year, please raise your hand? Thanks. And everybody who has a younger child that this would potentially interfere with, this renovation would affect. All right, thank you. Well, I'm going to kind of relate to you guys. We know that everybody in the community is essentially signing the check on this, but we thought it was most important that this school is for students. So we compiled a list of criteria, not 5, but 6 criteria that we thought would essentially make the students have a better school and really what they need in a school, not necessarily what the community needs. So our first one is to incorporate elements of beauty into the facility because we think that the students' mentality changes when they walk into a building that they take pride in. We believe that the students' attitude towards education will change. Having a lunchroom big enough to accommodate all students without long lunch lines. This may seem simple, but this is the only time that students are allowed to freely socialize with their peers. This also brings up many learning opportunities from learning to deal with social pressures to managing your time wisely. Having clean facilities goes hand in hand with incorporating elements of beauty, although it does prevent sickness, which, I mean, is pretty much a given. Having an environmentally friendly school, I know has been brought up before, but it teaches the students how to protect your environment and will also save money. Having a proper climate control. Now, our group did this on an extremely hot day, so this was an essential. Students are affected when they're uncomfortable. It's difficult for a student sitting in a class for an hour and a half or in 45 minutes even when it's too hot or too cold. So we would like you guys to take into consideration having comfortable rooms. Having enough up-to-date computers and other technology, it's good for preparing for the future because technology, as we know, is our future. And it's efficient and helpful for the students that comprehend visual learning components better. Having a safe environment is a given also. Students don't want to go to a place that they feel threatened in or uncomfortable. Larger hallways, staircases so people aren't so close, surveillance cameras on the campus are some suggestions that we had for this. The 2 main criteria that we thought would really essentially make the students love this school is creating a comforting and welcoming environment and a school that the students can take pride in. On one hand, the old building has charm and sentimental value to its alumni. The building is full of history and is a landmark to the town of Portsmouth. However, the new building poses an opportunity to start fresh. At the new site, all of the criteria could be met without compromise. There would be enough space to build everything in its fullest potential. At the old site, space is limited, and some of the criteria would have to be compromised to accommodate. Like the group before us, our group took a toll and found that the new site was voted 6 over the other site. So Jamie's going to.
We had a lot of other criteria that we think would be best for the school. For one of them, it is important to have enough classrooms to support all the students. In addition, each of the classrooms should be large enough to accommodate its students. The school should have up-to-date facilities, including whiteboards, user-friendly lockers, and science labs. We thought that a school store would help students get necessary items that they need throughout the school day, ranging from school supplies to food. We also think that it is important to have a gymnasium with space for both gym classes as well as additional space for after-school athletics, which would help make the floor last longer for like the 75 years. Soundproofing the classrooms, especially around the band area, would help students better concentrate on their lessons. If the council decides to renovate the Portsmouth Middle School at Parrott Avenue rather than building a new school at Sagamore Creek, the students in the middle school, while rebuilding is taking place, should be considered. During the renovation, the middle school students would have to learn in modular classrooms. I went to Greenland Central School, and in 4th grade, while they were rebuilding the school, I had to have classes in a modular classroom. There was no heat, no AC. It was very hard to concentrate and to learn. It would be a very uncomfortable and distracting learning environment, and also the noise would be extremely hard. Finally, Renovation would cost Portsmouth City taxpayers more money than building a new school. If the council decides to build a new school at the Sagamore Creek site, there are also a number of considerations that should be studied. Because this location is so close to the high school students will be faced with increased morning traffic and loud noise while the construction is taking place. Also, the new construction would offset the high school's cross-country running course, so a new course would have to be built. The Sagamore Creek site sits on top of a landfill. The threat of environmental hazards may certainly pose valid concerns for students, parents, and teachers. There will be increased traffic twice a day for businesses and residents who are located adjacent to the proposed entranceway. Finally, as with the Parrott Avenue site, there are concerns about the city losing open space. Good? Yep. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present to you. My name is Tom Hindle. I'm reporting on behalf of Group K. So I will go ahead. This is obviously the building we're discussing and or the building yet to be. Group K's 5 criteria were adhered to the master plan as adopted by the city in March of 2005 to maintain the quality of education for Portsmouth 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, ensure the safety, security, and health of our middle school students, minimize the taxpayer burden by thoroughly examining the costs and their implications, and to construct a sustainable green facility which meets today's needs without compromising future needs. You've all seen the master plan for the city. Hundreds of people that lived in the city and love it spent a lot of time and effort deciding what they like about the city and the direction that they'd like to see the city go in. I think to not listen to that is an insult to the people of the city that have put the time and effort into that. The city has actually adopted it as a master plan. Building a site and a school in Sagamore Avenue site, at least, flies in the face of almost all of the points in the master plan. To highlight a few of those, which I won't go into in detail since they've already been discussed, are the transportation issues, the community facilities and services, integrating the school with the greater community at large. The natural resources and open spaces will be violated. The wildlife corridor will be eliminated. The recreation component of the master plan looks at expanding and strengthening the relationship between the recreation department and the athletic partnership, and also the cultural and historic resources of the arts that the city provides will be missed out on if we move out to Sagamore. Maintaining the quality of education is important for our group. We certainly want to support the current middle school educational formula, which seems to be so successful. We want to maximize the use of all of our city cultural resources, continue the teacher and student pride in the school. The images you see here are probably taken for granted by students and many of you here. Those will not be taken for granted if we're out at Sagamore Avenue and everyone has to get in a bus to come see them. Students are part of this now and they should be part of it. Ensuring safety, health, and security of students. Once again, the traffic issue comes up. Buses and cars and the traffic hours on Route 1. Supporting the physical exercise or the benefits by walking and biking to school. Despite our very lovely high school students that just presented, we felt as a group that having the middle school right next to the high school potentially could provide some unwelcome influences, so we wanted to see those two institutions separate. And we also obviously wanted to see close proximity to the community, the resources, which includes the library, the police department, fire department, etc. One of the biggest points for our group was the taxpayer burden that's associated with building a new middle school. The current proposal is based on a single bid, as you've heard, at least the information that we've been provided. On a capital spend such as this, it's a fiduciary obligation of this city to the constituents of the community to get multiple competitive bids in order to justify that kind of a spend. Certainly if I did that at work for a $40 million thing and sent it out to one group, I would not have a job the next day. No request for proposal was sent out to many of the specialized companies in the country that are involved in refurbishing and rehabilitating existing community schools, and we'd like to see that and recommend it to the group. And this is a difficult thing to analyze, but when you get the proper information after having gone through those activities, if there's a savings in refurbishing the middle school, what are the opportunity costs associated with not doing that? In looking at teacher salaries, programs that could be provided for children otherwise. And finally, also we need to look at the domino effect of building a new school. If we build a new school, it's already been pointed out that the middle school still exists, and it's still going to have to be rehabilitated to the tune of $30 or $40 million, whatever that number may be. So we're not looking at a $40 million project, we're looking at an $80 million project. And I would suggest that the numbers that were provided are somewhat suspect. Nothing was taken into account when looking at the construction of roads, traffic lights, new sewage infrastructure, all the blasting that's going to have to take place on the ledge, the potential disruption of the dump cap. So there are a lot of costs that were just not captured in the numbers that were presented to us. In addition, the city has already expanded the high school, and they've renovated it. They've built a beautiful new library. We also have $100 million facing us for wastewater treatment. There's 20,000 people in the city. Where is this money going to come from? I just don't get it. Finally, we want to see you construct a sustainable green facility, to build that to comply with LEED standards. Building that on the Sagamore Avenue site clearly does not meet that goal, would not be a LEED school based on the dump. I'll leave the rest of those points for you in the report. We did score all of these points, all of our criteria. It came out 110 for a renovation in Parrott Avenue to 13 for building a new school on Sagamore Avenue. If there was a new site other than Sagamore Avenue, that may have a different reflection, but based on the two sites we're talking about now, that's where we came out on the group. Other considerations we would also like to see, based on the size of this capital spend, a citywide referendum at the upcoming civic elections. Not necessarily do we build a new school on Sagamore Avenue or do we renovate the middle school, but do we make sure that all of these decisions are put into place? Do we thoroughly evaluate everything, or do we waive all of those obligations to the citizens? And lastly, we want to look at the demographic data and segregate the need for athletic fields separately when looking at the renovation of the site. Finally, I wanted to thank the group at large for being motivated by the democratic process. I thank the group, my group, for all of the dedicated hours that they've put into it. I'd like to thank the City Council and the school board providing the citizens with this democratic forum. And I'd like to thank the City and school board for actively listening. As elected officials, you have the obligation to listen to and adopt the wishes of the taxpayers of the city. In the case of the middle school issue, we would ask that you respect this obligation on our behalf.
Good evening. I'm Susan Chamberlain, and I'm representing Group I, and we are one of the groups that did not reach consensus. And in fact, I have to be very careful as to what I say, or group members are going to jump up and shout me down. So I am going to stick to my script here. The way we voted is we had 11 people, and there were 5 votes per person, and we had somewhere between 20 and 30 criteria. And so each person could put all 5 on one or one on many. So even our 5 criteria were not a unanimous position, but were something that people sorted through and had many differing opinions on. Our 5 criteria were, I'll just read them off and then go through them. Number 1, respect and apply City of Portsmouth Master Plan. That received 11 out of the 55 votes. Carefully evaluate and minimize environmental impact, received 8 votes. Respect and apply the educational narrative, 6 votes. Remain a multi-year school, more than 2 grades, also 6 votes. And design energy efficient building with architectural significance, also 6 votes. You've heard a lot about respecting the master plan, so I won't talk too much about that. But this can apply to either the Parrott Ave or the Sagamore Creek site. It's one decision out of many and should be incorporated into the overall view for the community. Number 2, the evaluation and minimize environmental impact. For Parrott Avenue, the issues that were raised are the potential neighborhood stormwater management issues that might arise with paving different areas, losing some of the green space there, the environmental impact of having athletic fields elsewhere. The concern is that there were not enough room for the fields and that students would be bused to athletic fields at another site. The impact of unknown pollutants. There are still unknown pollutants in the Mill Pond area. Loss of urban green space. And there's a note that 4 out of 9 members believe that, while being likely, the loss of green space is not necessarily a certainty. However, if the design does require the loss of green space, there's only so much urban space that is available. The issues with the Pierce Trust, people are very familiar with. The environmental impact on the Sagamore Creek, people had concerns about losing the woodlands and the wetlands. This is also seen as a green corridor for wildlife. As if this were the site, finishing the capping and improving the landfill site was seen to be a plus at the Sagamore Creek. I found it interesting that the site has been referred to as an open wildlife preserve and a toxic landfill at the same time. So whatever happens to that site, it should be cleaned up, it should be respected and used to its best advantage. There were concerns that construction there could create damage to the cap and cause contamination. There will be some impact of laying sewer storm drains, the impact of a new road, and the impact of unknown pollutants. All those would have to be evaluated. One of the reasons we did not take a final vote is that these are huge discussions, and each time we open the door, we just felt like there's so much to be considered. That we just didn't think that we, in the short time given, could really do them justice, and believe that with the expertise on the board and the council and hiring experts can take these criteria and really do them justice. Number 3 is respect and apply the educational narrative. The educational narrative is a document that was created by the educators at the middle school, and we think that their expertise should really be strongly considered. They weighed in on what they need to really do their jobs, and we are all impressed by the amazing job they have done in the limited facilities that they have. And we just think how exciting it would be with the new facility, wherever it is, what a great job they will be able to do. They're applying this to the Parrott Avenue. There was concern about the transition. A number of people have raised that already. It's important to note that for those students, 2 of their years very likely could be in transition, and that's their experience. The limited space requires prioritization of the educational narrative. Again, with Parrott Avenue, you really have to be creative to meet all the needs. Sagamore Creek, there is more space, there is more opportunity to meet the educational narrative. The transition, we were better able to meet the needs of the students during transition. There's simply more space available there. The multi-year school, more than 2 grades. There were numerous studies that this is a criteria that is important to the students, and that it should be the needs of the student that drive the size of the building, not the size of the building that drives the needs of the students. And so that was just important, that however it works, that the education is what's really important. An energy efficient building with architectural significance, this can apply to both Parrott Avenue and Sagamore Creek. Parrott Avenue has some beautiful historic features, but perhaps it's lacking in the energy efficiency. Sagamore Creek could design an energy efficient building that could enhance the architectural significance of the community. It need not be an ugly new building. It could be a lot of different things. The few other criteria that were important but did not meet the top 5 was walkability for all students, and it's important to know that most students will not be able to walk to either site. We simply are a big city. So that enhancing whatever walkability is there is good, but it should not mean that students who take the bus have a second-rate education. The site selection should be done by applying the criteria so that you find the site that meets the criteria, and again, and not the other way around. We wanted to make sure we get the highest percentage of state aid, so we don't want to lose any of those possibilities. Are you about to wave me down? There's flexibility regarding the grade configuration. Most of these I've hit on already. But again, we had a robust and interesting discussion. I think we all learned a lot, and we thank you for your time.
Hi to both the boards. Michael Bliss, I'm speaking for Group H. These are our 5 criteria, and I'll go into those at greater length as we get into them. We're another group that was not unanimous in all of our decisions on the criteria. But we want to acknowledge our minority, and our report does include a voting where we had votes 1 to 5 based on the values we placed on the 5 criteria, so you have some kind of weighted average to go on. Our first criteria was the integration of school and community. And both majority and minority felt that this could be accomplished in some ways with either site. We're looking for a strong connection as a general value, but how we apply that value, we differed. The minority wanted to bring the community into the new building through programmatic means, and the majority wanted to connect a new rehab facility at the existing middle school location with the surrounding municipal core of Portsmouth, consisting of public buildings, library, city hall, and public parks and playing fields in the existing site around the mill pond. The majority thought that it was important that middle school students should see and be seen, as another group at least had mentioned, that they spend their middle school years firmly within the larger community and not out of sight, out of mind, in an isolated spot behind the high school. The majority also felt that there were benefits in separating the two schools, both for issues of safety and interaction of the different age groups in the two schools. Our second criteria was reuse of the existing buildings. Both minority and majority thought it would be important to take the existing middle school's architecture and historic features and preserve them if a new site was selected. But as we've heard many times tonight, the majority thought that the site should not contradict the master plan. Certain goals encouraging development that supports revitalization of community centers and neighborhoods, and it reuses and rehabilitates existing infrastructure. The minority simply does not agree with this criteria. On our next criteria, multiple use of new and existing city assets. Both minority and majority agree that either site we should provide multi-use for both students and community. The majority is looking at the benefits of combined plans and actions, both school system and city government. A synergy working in our municipal core to create a whole greater than the sum of the parts. For instance, why take Alumni Field, a recreational asset, to become largely a new middle school parking lot when a new parking structure on the close-by municipal lot could provide school staff parking by day and general parking at night. For instance, if a new auditorium is needed for the middle school site, place it on the adjacent lot housing the campus care facility where it could function as a school city performance space. And for instance, why not close off Parrott Avenue in front of the middle school to enhance school traffic safety and create a new recreational space on the site that we already have. As a previous group said, it's very complicated issues. Our group hopes to encourage creative design approaches while enhancing our municipal core area. Our next criteria just refers to the educational narrative. We could all agree that we want the best school for our middle school students. We encourage the highest quality learning environment. We would like to do that within the other criteria that we have. Our last one is environmental sustainability. Both sections of our group could agree that the building should be a green building that is LEED certified, and the majority feels very strongly that we should preserve the city's remaining natural acreage wherever possible. As many of you are aware, through the process of building our new library, LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, is administered by our U.S. Green Building Council, has several performance levels above the basic designation, silver, gold, and platinum. What you may not be aware of is that the U.S. Green Building Council is developing a new rating system, LEED ND, where the ND stands for Neighborhood Development. And the LEED ND will integrate green building standards, bricks and sticks, with principles of smart growth and urbanism, verifying that both, quote, location and design meet accepted high standards for environmentally responsible, sustainable development. This new LEED rating, which will be going in effect in the next couple of years, goes to the heart of our group's majority's concern that the city both build green in the urban core and preserve the city's small store of open space. We had some other input items, many of which have been mentioned before, and thank you from Group H.
Good evening. I'm Tina Wilkinson, and I'm representing Group G. I, like all the other groups, would like pull it down. Okay. Like Tina Wilkinson, representing Group G. Like other groups, I'd like to thank the City Council and the School Committee for giving us this opportunity to hear our voices. We were not a unanimous group, so what I'm going to speak tonight about are our top 5 criteria and how we evaluated those criteria, but we will not be giving a recommendation of any type. Our top 5 criteria. Number 1 was the quality of education. We felt both facilities could meet the state and federal standards, provide a safe and secure environment, as well as meet the requirements of the educational narrative. So we didn't address those specifically. What we looked at was the access to valuable community resources and also the ability of students to have physical activity, either through recreation fields, biking or walking to school, etc. Our second criteria was community impact, and this is how the sites would contribute to the character of Portsmouth, its compact form, and walkability. Our third criteria was the environmental and sustainability impact. Many of the other groups have already spoken about the master plan and current initiatives regarding sustainability. We also wanted to look at it from a long-term decision making. We wanted to consider energy consumption for the entire life of the building, not just for a couple years. Also, open space and the potential for it to have more broad use than it is today, and environmental habitat. Transportation. We considered the impact of the sites on traffic, infrastructure, and the ongoing costs associated with those, again, over the entire life of the building. Our group put significant value on the ability for students to walk or bike to school, and you'll see us keep coming back to that under all of our criteria. Full cost. The full cost cuts across all the first 4 criteria. The costs are beyond just the design and construction costs. It's the environmental mitigations, it's the land trust or restrictions that may have to be purchased, it's infrastructure for the sewers, the electrical, etc. But it's also the non-monetary costs. And this is a quote from somebody in my group who wrote it more eloquently than I can probably say. But he said it is essential that there be an open and transparent process that involves the public in trading off non-monetary costs related to sustainability, environmental, and community impacts alongside full monetary costs. We consider those as costly as the dollars and cents that hit our tax bills. So I'm going to talk about each of the criteria quickly. and many of this has already been discussed, so we'll go through them. Carrot Avenue, it has a connection to downtown, as we all know. There's access to community resources such as the library, Strawberry Bank, the music hall. But the dislocation of students during the renovation process could be for a student's entire time in middle school. Sagamore Creek, greater design flexibility. There's potential for future expansion should the demographics change beyond our dreams. And there's a space for additional fields. The proximity to the high school we thought was both good and bad, depending upon which way you were looking. But the remote location was a great concern to us, as well as increased transportation. And from this, we wondered what would be the impact on after-school activities if students were unable to walk and had to be driven each place. Second criteria is community impact. Parrott Avenue we see as a physical anchor to the downtown community, and the staff and students are able to actively participate in the downtown community, whether it's at the library or just hanging around downtown. We also really value the multi-generational environment of the Parrott Avenue facility being right next to the senior center. Sagamore Creek would accommodate potential future growth. The proximity to the city pool, some of our members thought was a benefit as well. But it would be the loss of one of the last large open spaces in the city, and we thought that was a really big con. Also, there's less opportunities for students to be part of the diverse community that we have here in downtown. Environmental and sustainability impact. The ability to walk and bike, we've spoken about that throughout the presentations. We thought that maybe the Parrott Avenue would have a lower carbon footprint when you compared it to Sagamore Creek, and we would like to see that in the designs. Preservation of the open space at the Sagamore Creek facility would be a benefit as well. The infrastructure is in place. We have sewer lines, we have electrical, but there is the possible loss of some Pierce Trust land, as well as the renovation debris, which would be a short-term issue. Sagamore Creek, we thought the loss of wetlands and sensitive habitat was a significant issue. We also looked at that facility as future park potential. Our group was inspired when they went out there and saw the sites. Many of them had never seen that facility, that land before. Also, the building and infrastructure would create heat islands where we currently don't have any buildings. Moving on to transportation, which is our number 4. And again, we see the ability to walk and bike. Many of our students are within a mile of Parrott Avenue. There's a lack of parking, though, and we've spoken, other groups have said that there's no car or bus drop-off, so we would need one of those so that our students can get dropped off safely. Sagamore Creek has easier parking, but additional cars would aggravate the traffic problems that already exist on Route 1. And there is very limited ability to walk or bike. Full cost. Parrott Avenue has infrastructure in place. There's no use of environmentally sensitive open space, but we do have the Pierce Trust land buyout, which is a sensitive subject. Sagamore Creek, there is a possibility that we could rent or sell Parrott Avenue to offset some of those costs, but we need significant infrastructure and its upkeep for the future. There's the non-monetary cost of lost open space, as well as conservation and wetlands mitigations that might occur. We have some other criteria and alternatives and ideas that we wanted to share with you. Our 6th criteria, which was aesthetics and design, and we really want to communicate, regardless of where you build this school, please make it as beautiful as our current middle school. We do not want another big box. We are very concerned with the open Parrott Avenue site, like several other groups. We don't want another Lafayette school either. We talked about alternatives, K through 8 or K through 6 elementary schools, and we wondered why only sites greater than 28 acres were on our site map. The Parrott Avenue site is not 28 acres, so we thought additional land sites may be able to be evaluated. And we just say, encourage the use of Sagamore Creek. It's a beautiful area, and we thought it would be a wonderful natural recreation park, similar to the Urban Forestry Center. Let the citizens know that it's ours to use, because most of them don't.
Good evening, folks. My name is John Shea. I'll be doing the report for Group J. I will be brief. I know you have a lot of presentations this evening. I do want to offer perspective on the front end that I think I can offer somewhat uniquely, not singularly, but uniquely. There's a lot of folks in this room that have spent a lot of time in Portsmouth and a lot of native Portsmouth folks. I've lived here for only 5 years. My wife and I moved here because it's where we wanted to live and where we wanted to raise our kids, and we continue to just adore this community. I lived a lot of places before Portsmouth, small towns, the West Coast, progressive cities like Seattle. I lived in Iowa, and I'll tell you the caucus process out there doesn't touch the primary process out here, quite honestly. This process is remarkable, and I know it is a burden at times for the school board and elected officials and city councilors. More input is not simple. But it's a phenomenal thing, and to have this many folks volunteer as much time as they did this evening. For those of you that have lived in Portsmouth a long time, don't forget that this doesn't happen other places. It doesn't. It really doesn't. It is a truly remarkable thing, and I know that puts a lot of responsibility on those of you listening tonight to hear us, and I hope those of us speaking also trust that you're the ones that are going to make the decision. But a lot of time went into this input. Group J, we had a great time working this through together. We came together from a lot of different perspectives. We had some educators. We had parents representing all 5 schools, all 3 elementary schools, the middle school and the high school, and came at this from a lot of different angles and came to some agreement, which is neat. Our top 5 priorities, safety was first. Doing the right thing strategically, I'll explain. That doesn't really stand on its own. Geographic location, educational philosophy, and cost. We didn't really have a whole lot of second-tier criteria. We folded pretty much everything into those, but I do have a final thought that will echo some of what you've already heard. Safety. This was our number 1 priority, and I don't think anybody can argue with the fact that nothing matters more than the health and well-being of our community's children. Having had a hand in starting a school and having, until that point, always believed that the educational mission of the school came first, what I learned through that process was actually the custodial responsibility comes first. Health and well-being of the kids comes first. It's one thing to send somebody home not having learned as much algebra as they should have that day. It's another thing to send them home ill. It's another thing to send them home injured. The custodial responsibility is sacred. And although our group did come out on the side of center of town, openness, connected, has a lot going for it in terms of safety, health, well-being, we had trouble getting past the landfill, and we looked carefully at the LEED standards. We supported those from the get-go, and when the LEED folks talk about the fact that a contaminated landfill de facto is not acceptable for building a school, we struggled with that one. And if we were to go to Sagamore Creek, I think there's just a lot of us out there that don't want to know that it's highly likely or probable that it's safe to put a school there. We want something better than that, and we're just concerned that it just doesn't make sense on that level. Kids in particular are much more susceptible to toxins, environmental pollutants than adults. Putting 6th, 7th, 8th graders there on a landfill, near a landfill, was a difficult one for us. Number 2, doing the right thing strategically. Thinking in terms of our middle school students, teachers, parents, thinking in terms of our K-12 system, the entire Portsmouth community, the regional area, and not just thinking about what makes sense now, but a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades out. I think what this came down to for us was really thoughtfulness and quality. And by thoughtfulness, I think the critical question here, and I'm going to echo what some of you have already heard, is this decision shouldn't be where should we put our 6th and 7th, 8th graders next year, the year after that. It should be what makes the most sense for a K-12 public school system for the next decade, the next 2 decades. And we put in a lot of trust and faith in everybody involved in this process. But I know that in the mechanics and the details, you can get bogged down in what are we going to do to address this one, and how are we going to solve this over the next 4 or 5 years. Thinking longer term, further out. Green space, what does it mean to lose the Sagamore Creek green space? What does it mean to leave that building vacant if we were to leave the Portsmouth Middle School site? And quality, this applies to either site, and doing it well and getting it right, learning from our mistakes. The LEED standards are important to us. We talked about cost and fiscal responsibility, but we said first and foremost, let's give the kids what they need, not in excess, but do and deliver on what they need and get that piece done well. Look at a lot of contractors, look at a lot of options. So we came down on the side of Parrott Avenue, having the edge on this one. Location, and I think this has been said in many ways, the Sagamore Creek site and the athletic fields, for someone who played sports growing up, was a big part of my educational experience. I drooled when I first saw the blueprint with all those fields right there and nearby. That's definitely a big advantage for Sagamore Creek. When we looked at it, everything else leaned towards Parrott Avenue. In town, the library's right there. Our sense is, and I know it was already referred to, and I don't have statistics on this, but that site may maximize the number of kids that can walk or ride bicycles. That may be debatable. We'll have to look at that one. But about 10, 15 years ago, a lot of research started coming out in the educational field as suburbs and cities around the country started moving schools out of the middle of the town and out at the edges of town. The message that it sends, what it does to the entire educational experience. Boy, if anybody's going to get it right, it's New England, it's small town New England, it's Portsmouth in terms of keeping the middle school central. Educational philosophy, our group came at this from different perspectives and kind of concluded that the team teaching, getting to know kids well, middle school philosophy that we currently employ is the way to go. And frankly, you can do that one at either site. You can do that well at either site. Cost. Right school, designed and built with quality is our first priority. Fiscal responsibility and sound project management was a close second, but we do want to make sure the kids get what they need. Cost is a consideration. Our belief, and none of us are experts on this, but some of us have got some experience in the area, that they're probably going to be roughly in the same ballpark, and certainly everything involved with building a school in a landfill, none of us are going to be surprised if we see the budget numbers on that one go up. If we were to go in that direction, it's complicated to renovate and add on at the current Portsmouth Middle School site. They're probably pretty even, but at the end of the day, what we're left with is, if we go to Sagamore Creek, is an empty building here, which surely or very likely will cost the city some money for renovation further down the road. So we gave that one to Parrott Avenue. That was our rundown. On the first three criteria I gave you, Parrott Avenue. On the fourth, philosophy, either one could do it. And on the fifth, we think that Parrott Avenue might actually be the bigger picture, longer term, cost-effective answer. Let's not miss anything's already been said. We had a lot of good discussion in our group, and this really goes to the number 2 one about doing the right thing strategically and thinking further ahead, and not just thinking about the 6th and 7th, 8th graders, but where we're going longer term. We talked about a citywide kindergarten and a whole bunch of different options. None of us claim to be experts on what's the best for our middle schoolers, but we did want to make sure, and second, what's already been said about considering all options. Thank you all.
My name is Jeffrey Cooper. I'm representing Group F. I'm thinking back to when we met here about a month and a half ago, and I remember the tension in the room was really palpable because, you all remember that, because the media indicated that there was a split right down the middle of the city. The Joint Committee had come to a stalemate. The City Council was a stalemate. I think the school board was leaning one direction, and there was a lot of tension at that time. So I walked into our study group expecting a big tug-of-war. And our group turns out to be a pretty wide, broad spectrum. We had men and women, we had younger people, older, some with kids in the schools, some retired, some had lived here as few as 4 years, some who had been born and raised here in Portsmouth and had white hair. And what I observed is that the people who lived here the longest were the ones who have felt the most passionate about the position that we were taking, and that in terms of my tug-of-war analogy, we were all pulling in the same direction, in the same end of the rope. So we brainstormed about the criteria to improve the educational qualities for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. We came up with 23 items and a big long list. 23 happens to be my lucky number. So we looked back over the 23 items and put them into 4 general categories. The one that came to the top that we all felt most strongly about, passionately, was the environmental impact. As responsible stewards of the environment, the city should make the choice that would make the least environmental impact both now and in the future. Now, the land along Sagamore Creek was set aside by a previous city council in 1975 for conservation's district in mind. It's been used that way for all that time. It's been maintained that way, and it's the last significant woodland area here in Portsmouth. Now, I remember I used to walk around the Urban Forestry Center, and they had wonderful trails through the woods, and one day I came across a bulldozer and some cleared lots, and we all know what happened there. But that was done by a developer who had the right to do that. But a city council in the past put this land aside for conservation district, and now we have a new city government that is seriously considering that the city itself should go and undo the conservation district that was previously set aside. Our Group F felt really strongly that that's the wrong thing to do. Secondly, the grouping was the social environment. Now, I walked into the situation thinking that both options were bad. However, through the discussions, our group, and I agree, saw the value in a downtown middle school in the heart of the community. It's near Strawberry Bank. It's near the music hall. It's near, walking to the Albacore, Prescott Park, to Market Square, and all the social cultural heart of our city. Now, one of the parents of the kids said, well, my kids aren't going on these field trips, but that's a question of school policy. If we move out to Sagamore Ave, then it becomes clearly impossible, because to go visit the fire station would be a question of a bus trip, and that is a real obstacle to it. It's too remote. Now, the other thing is that Sagamore site, following right on that, the Sagamore site is completely dependent on cars and motor transportation to get to and from there. It's a half-mile road. We're talking about how would the parents feel about their kids walking through the woods, taking shortcuts through the woods to get, if they were going to walk there, or riding their bikes, or walking, emerging onto Route 1, where there's a busy street there, right there on that highway interchange, right by the Bolorama, and it just didn't seem like a safe thing. I mean, I see people from Crossroads taking their lives in hands walking across that street all the time. We don't want our kids doing that. And there's health reasons. We want to encourage our kids to be riding bikes. Environmental reasons, we're concerned about air pollution, gasoline usage in a time of scarcity. So we think that these all weigh in favor of the downtown site. In short, we want the school to remain downtown where it's an integral part of the community. The third grouping was the city planning issues, and a lot of things got thrown into this category, but the primary among them was conformity to the master plan, and a lot of groups have mentioned the master plan previously. So just a few quotes that others haven't. It says development that supports the revitalization of community centers and neighborhoods, reuses, rehabilitates existing infrastructure, integration of schools with the greater community, new growth to areas that are already developed, and incorporate bicycle, pedestrian, and transit into site planning. All those are things right from the master plan, which we wrote, and we all feel strongly that that ought to be the guiding principle, the criterion, one of the major criterion in making this decision, and it weighs strongly in favor of the downtown school. It's also the policy of the state of New Hampshire, as said by Jean Shaheen, that a new school on the outskirts of town uses previously open space, increases the need for driving to get kids to school in the outskirts, and we're using automobiles that results in either planned, thoughtful growth or unnecessary sprawl. This is an edict that we agree with. It's state of New Hampshire policy, and we think it should be followed. We don't want to see sprawl going out to the outskirts of the city. We want to see the decision for this made in the context of the other projects that are looming on the horizon. People have mentioned the sewer plant, but the big concerns are how is this going to affect our taxes, the city debt? If the city takes on too much of a financial burden, a debt service, how is that going to affect school programs? We're just seeing an argument over one being cut. How is it going to affect the city municipal budget? These are all questions that we want to make sure that our money is spent to best advantage. So that brings us to the fourth grouping, which is the building and the facilities and how that's going to affect the quality education. You might wonder, 2 minutes, why quality education doesn't come to the very top of the list. Well, because team design and the school board said that the quality education can be had at either one of the sites. So that's why it's, kind of like became a wash For there, at either site, we can have up-to-date facilities, the auditorium, the science labs, and all that good stuff. But team design said that the two costs are roughly equal. We question that because the Parrot Ave proposal the team design had included $7 million for new ball fields at the Sagamore Site Conservation Zone, which including blasting and the road. In either way, there's wetlands mitigation to deal with. And so we think that those factors skew the evaluation the team designs that made the cost of redevelopment on Parrot Ave seem more expensive and the cost of development out at Sagamore seem less expensive, and we question that. Now that is leads to the demographic projections. We spent a lot of time discussing that because the demographic projections we saw related a lot to the state of New Hampshire and Rockingham County, but Portsmouth deserves a separate demographic analysis because we see the trend going towards retirement, housing, and people without kids, and we see a potential for a shrinking student body. So we want to save money by sizing the school correctly, avoiding excess building capacity. Other groups have mentioned that we want to see experts on renovation brought into the process rather than just one firm, and I won't go into that. We wanted to see the playing fields in close proximity to the school, so we stood on the front steps of the school and we turned around and looked, and what do you think we saw? We saw a bunch of playing fields right there in front of us. So we think that that those playing fields that are existing can be reconfigured for middle school use. We know that there has to be some funds put aside for a buyout for the existing encroachments on the Pierce property. That money could be used towards putting a new place for the adult rec leagues, and that way everybody wins. The middle school has the fields nearby. The adults leagues have a nice new facility. So based on all that, we think, plus somebody already mentioned the Leeds qualification disqualifies the Sagamore site, and we think that that should disqualify the Sagamore site too. In fact, Group F thinks the Sagamore site should be disqualified from consideration. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, I'd like to see something.
Good evening. My name is Eric Spear. I represent Group E, and we're named Group E for Eric. We developed our criteria. We had three areas we really wanted to focus on. First, the students, of course. We wanted to do right by the students, but providing them a quality facility. We wanted to make sure the taxpayers represented as well. We don't want to ignore the fact that this costs a lot of money. Finally, in addition to taxpayers and students, the environment needs to have a voice, and we wanted to have the environment represented on our criteria as well. Before I do the criteria, I'll just explain the summary. We'll begin with the ending. This is what we have to do. First, we were very excited that the question that Portsmouth Listens gave us was, talk about the facilities for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. We liked that because it didn't say they all had to be in one facility. It gave us some flexibility in placement, and it suggested to us that the first thing the city should do is explore other grade configurations that might serve the students better, make use of existing infrastructure, and minimize capital costs. After that, we also completely agree we need to renovate the Parrott Avenue building as a 21st century public educational facility. Lastly, continue to preserve the Sagamore Creek parcel as undisturbed wilderness. So just those three things are what we ended up with. How did we get there? Well, we had 4 criteria. Number 1, grade configuration. I touched on that already. Number 2, school community symbiosis. We wanted to have the students and residents of Portsmouth co-located as much as possible. Number 3, fiscal sustainability. That's long-term. Can we manage these bond payments? Can we manage to afford this new facility? Number 4, environmental impact. We want to minimize any negative environmental impact. Grade configuration. What do we mean by that? We need to determine where the best fit is for grades 6 through 8. That's what we're concerned about within the entire K-12 spectrum for both the students and the taxpayers. Okay? Now, when we get into that a little bit more, There's no evidence suggests that a separate 678 configuration is superior to others. In fact, the New England League of Middle School says that the middle school concept can be applied in any configuration. Secondly, students benefit from fewer transitions. Focus on the Wonder Years put up by the Rand Corporation mentions that specifically, that students suffer harm with every transition. Number three, many other communities in New Hampshire use a variety of grade configurations. Clearly, there's not one golden solution. Finally, we would make better use of our existing in-facilities if we examine first all grade configurations. School-community symbiosis. We must keep our students within our civic center. It's critical to healthy adolescent development, and I'm talking about mental health and physical health. We saw a presentation in here a few months ago by a psychiatrist who mentioned that kids benefit by being around adults, and adults benefit too. We want to maximize opportunities for walking and biking. Obviously, one middle school can't be within walking distance of every home in Portsmouth, but you want to maximize your chances. We want to be close to first responders, like police and fire department. We want access to community resources, like the library, music hall, et cetera, et cetera. Economics, fiscal sustainability. We must control escalating capital costs for the near-term projects, like we've already heard mentioned, the sewer, fresh water, fire station. We want to avoid massive expense in building costs that might reduce money available for teachers. We all felt that the programming and the faculty are more important than the facilities for our children. We're very dubious of the cost estimates that were provided to us. You've heard reasons for that. We also acknowledge, and we all encourage you to acknowledge, that student enrollment is either flat or declining, at least within the near term, probably the long term. And again, we have to include life cycle costs when we're talking about these buildings. So far we had the upfront costs. We want to make sure we consider the 50-year cost. The environmental issues, we start off right off the bat. We want to preserve the limited forest lands we have. We support the master plan's designation of conservation land. We recognize the value that wetlands provide not just for wildlife, but also as flood mitigation, pollution filtration. These are all positives. We hope any new building would be a green building. Let's apply the criteria to the sites. We went through each site. We gave it a letter grade A through F because everyone understands that. And for each of the criteria, each of the 4 criteria, with Sagamore Creek, Parrot Avenue. The last one, we were told other. We decided that didn't sound good. We called it opportunity. Opportunity means we have an opportunity here to do something better. It comes along once every 50 years. Here's our chance. And when we talk about opportunity, when you think about that, that includes renovating the Parrot Avenue School. All right? So, grade configuration. Sagamore Creek and Parrot Avenue, that's assuming we put a middle school on both those sites. That is a C and a C. That's the status quo. All right, that's fine. We can do that. Acceptable. Opportunity gets an A because you can really maximize your chances for improvement. School community symbiosis. Obviously, Sagamore Creek's off in the hinterlands. It gets an F. Parrot Avenue gets an A. It's right in the center. Opportunity gets a B. Depending on how you allocated students, some of them might be off to the high school, so we would give it a B. Just pictorially, so you can see the impact of where the schools, where the sites are. The Sagamore Creek site is on the bottom in the center of that plus, and the Parrot Avenue site is on the top with the plus. You can even look, from an environmental standpoint, it's greener down below. It's grayer. That wasn't me coloring it up. That's because it's greener down below, if you got that point. All right. And then I got to move on because I got the little thing. Oh, and this was just last week, the number of bikes that were at the middle school. So obviously it's well used now. We want it to continue to be well used. Long-term fiscal sustainability. Sagamore Creek gets a D. We're very nervous about the site work that needs to go into there and the long-term costs of maintaining these roads and other long-term costs. Parrot Avenue makes smart use of existing infrastructure. That was key. Environmental impact, obviously. Sagamore Creek gets an F. There's wildlife habitat there. There's an urban wildlife corridor connecting the Urban Forestry Center, other open spaces. They cannot be replaced. It would be destroyed, and this is unacceptable. Other opportunity in Parrot Avenue, obviously, get an A. There's no environmental impact. You've already heard that to get LEED certified, you can't have a landfill on your site. So I'm not going to repeat that. Summary. Consider other grade configurations, please. renovate the Parrott Avenue School, preserve Sagamore Creek as undisturbed wilderness. And then to finish up, we got a group photo at the end there.
Notion.
Hi, I'm Carol Chalman, and I'm here on behalf of Group D, and I apparently am the only person who does not have a PowerPoint presentation. Oh, you don't too? Okay. Join the club. I'm going to try very hard not to repeat a lot of what has already been said. There is a problem in that we all have agreed on so many things. We've all come from different walks of life. We've gotten together, and I think the point of this process is to show you that we are not in disagreement. We are actually in agreement, and we're saying the same thing over and over again to you. So having said that, I'm going to try a few little different things. First of all, I want to just note that our group, while we recommend strongly that the Parrott Avenue Middle School be renovated, we are not suggesting in any way that this just be a Band-Aid fix. We would like to see a first-rate educational facility at that location. Try this one on for an opportunity. This could be the school that merges technology with history. Which leads me to just this whole thing, as I think Eric just said, it's really, it's not a dispute or people against other people in our community. It's really just an opportunity to do something better. And as we know, with the current middle school, there's really only one way to go, and that's up. So, you know, this is really just an opportunity, and an opportunity for leadership. And in terms of being leaders of the city, I think that you need to understand what we value as citizens, why we live here in Portsmouth and pay the high taxes we do. The reason we do is because of it being a walkable, bikeable city, history, culture. These are the reasons that we live here. This is what makes Portsmouth, Portsmouth. And why wouldn't we have a middle school be representative of Portsmouth? Why not have a walkable, bikeable, historic school in our downtown? It's just only natural. This is who we are as a city. The landfill has come up several different times. I don't want to bemoan the issue. It is nevertheless such a significant issue that it must be brought up again. Our group felt strongly that we do not want you, our leaders, to experiment with the health and safety of our children. LEED has also been brought up a few times, and the reason LEED is important is they represent the best national policies on environment and energy design. And we should be meeting those high standards, without a doubt. The library that we have met LEED standards. We don't need to meet the gold standard, but we should at least be meeting the minimum standard of LEED. LEED just, you know, says categorically that you cannot build on the Sagamore Creek site. It categorically excludes school sites where there exists a landfill. There's no if, and, or but about it. So it just completely eliminates that site on its face. And it does so for good reasons, because children are more susceptible to harm from exposure to toxins from a landfill. Finally, we've talked this evening a fair bit about the master plan and how important it is. And I think it's kind of interesting. We're here doing a Portsmouth Listen study circle about the middle school, And it's really the master plan that applies, and the master plan was done by Portsmouth Listens study circles. So we're kind of, there are probably people who are alumni of the first one that are here. And I said this the first night, and someone sort of took my line, but I'm going to say it again anyway. If you, all our leaders here, our elected leaders, if you deviate from, ignore, or dismiss this master plan, it is a direct slap in the face to the citizens of this city. This whole decision comes down to one topic that my group felt passionately about, and that is sustainability. As I'm sure all of you, as our leaders, are very familiar with sustainability, it has kind of become the buzzword in terms of growth and development. We want to make sure that in taking care of our present generation's needs, that we are not harming future generations. And this whole situation we're in here can really be summed up in terms of sustainability. The Portsmouth Avenue site is in and of itself a sustainable site. It being downtown, near fire and safety, walkable, bikeable, already existing infrastructure, built community, not taking green space. The list goes on and on. Parrott Avenue is the sustainable site. And then you can add on top of this, you have this great opportunity to build a sustainable school on top of a sustainable site, or renovate a sustainable school on the sustainable site. This is, as I said earlier in the beginning, what I can't emphasize enough is for you leaders, after you've taken into account what we've all said here, hopefully some of it anyway, look at this as an opportunity. Embrace this whole issue and show leadership and make the decision that's right for Portsmouth. We've told you what we think. Now it's your turn.
Carol, I'd like to congratulate you on taking the group consensus and converting it into a heartfelt message for your group. First of all, it's my honor as a citizen and a privilege as a spokesperson for Group C to try my best at this waning hour to present new, perhaps different information and do it in a creative way.
Oh, sorry about that. If I could just get your name for everybody here.
Michael Griffin.
Great, thanks.
Yep. Our group was given the responsibility to formulate a clear, concise plan and present it to the school board and the council. Our criteria were arrived and based upon important information and considerations. We felt that it was in the best interest of the middle school children and their needs to consider all the vital and necessary practices, resources, and constitute them in the best interest of our community. Following the role of the responsibilities as the group, we determined 5 criteria. I believe they have all been spoken for in great detail, perhaps more articulate than myself. But in essence, we arrived at the criteria and then formulated the criteria into a message. Again, we prioritize based upon need, based upon the consensus that the educational needs of the children would be taken care of at either facility. I believe that I'm qualified to speak on behalf of our group and to state environmental impact issues that again have been stated prior, but that the history of our seacoast and the location of this site lends itself to an opportunity to describe and show in detail the site and how it pertains to the overall green corridor or environmental corridor, if you will. Is there a button here? Starting from Leech Island, which is one of the group of islands in Little Harbor, we're extending in a corridor through Little Harbor itself. And of great note would be the very generous and noble contribution of the property on the Creek Farm by Chet Knoll, which is now part of the process of the state forestry conservation. That land extends down across Sagamore Avenue, filtering continuously through Tidewatch and down Jones Avenue, and comes upon a 60-acre site, formerly the town refuge landfill and multi-purpose waste disposal facility for 50-some years. And that land continues across Lafayette Road, through the marsh adjacent to the Bratskeller, and upon crossing Peverly Hill Road, that land opens up into a massive, well-thought-out conservation area. I would first identify the Het Farm, which is at the top of the hill where you see all the horses. That property ties into the Banfield Road wooded section, and it also ties into the adjacent property recently acquired by the Conservation Conservatory. That land consisting of the prior Stokel family farm and the Griffin property in this area. Those two combined parcels, in conjunction with the city property that was acquired back in 1985, constitute 600 acres of undisturbed wetland in a very, very environmentally sensitive area referred to as the Great Bog. As that continuous piece of land extends beyond Ocean Road, it crosses over into Packers Bog, again, another large, sensitive environmental area, valuable for watershed, drainage, aquifer protection. This whole corridor from Breakfast Hill Road, which would be the south boundary, down to the end of Little Harbor Road at the Coolidge Mansion, is 6 miles in length. Within that corridor are 1,500 acres of already preserved wildlife and land trust property. Our concern related to taking this piece of property, which in the configuration of the diagram on the map would be sort of an hourglass configuration, and cutting it in half and preventing the opportunity for wildlife to be working their way back and forth safely through this corridor. Adjacent to the property, obviously, is the Forestry Conservation Center on the opposite shore on Elwyn Road. Second, of greatest importance to us, again, was the cost to the taxpayers, the city of Portsmouth. Without interjecting what other long-term considerations have to be taken care of in terms of capital expenditure and budgeting, focusing entirely on the Parrott Avenue site, we still question and don't understand what the long-term utilization of that building would be, and if it were to be renovated, again, someone else had spoken prior, the cost of that renovation. Also factored into that would be if the land on Jones Avenue was taken into consideration for use, the city would have to find a suitable replacement for that property. And based upon the available sites in the city of Portsmouth, I can't come up with anything that's comparable or affordable for the city to be able to do that. The Jones Ave property, I think, presents great challenges from a construction standpoint. I also believe that the estimates based on site work improvement are very, very important and need to be considered. As a consideration, again, in the context of conserving taxpayers' money, a well-thought-out staged construction at the existing site with the possibility of moving the 8th grade class up to the new high school, which, as we've been led to believe or informed, there's 500 empty student desks in that facility at this time. So perhaps by putting them up there, you lessen the impact on the other children. The fire facility, and the location, again, presents great challenges, but I think it sends an important message of the need and the importance and the value of students and community interaction. We've just made a tremendous investment in terms of our new library. And again, the facts that have all been stated in pretty good detail prior to that, we also felt were important. Flexibility was another criteria, and in terms of that, the open discussion pertained primarily around the apparent declining or stable demographics in terms of student need. So if a building design concept is taken into consideration, if the classrooms were split in different configurations, if that building were used potentially just as it originally was intended for the 7th and 8th graders, and the 6th graders were to go back down a level, the concept of a major renovation is probably not as overall to be taken into consideration. One very interesting concept, if the site was confirmed to be at its existing location down on Parrott Avenue, a very creative role model with the athletic fields, maybe dead-ending Parrott Avenue on the Richards Ave end and creating an entire campus concept, which I think is something that educated people and people with more vision than myself could articulate.
Oh, hey, Michael, just want to give you a heads up that we're past the time limit.
Then I will make one quick summary statement.
Thanks.
And I apologize.
That's all right. Thank you.
That based upon the information and the consensus of the group, and we were respectful of dissenting opinions, that the majority report, which I've given you, would ask the City Council and the School Board to consider renovating the existing school.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Griffin, and I'm going to be presenting the report on behalf of Study Circle B. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the other members of our study circle, who are Bill Sella, Carol Melcher, Hillary O'Neill, Kim Seafried, Pat Nichols, Dick Adams, and Rick Chelman. And Rick did a lot of the research and anticipated in writing this report, and also our facilitator, Jack Jameson. Our top 5 criteria, as you can see here, are repetitive of many others. They are obviously to achieve consistency with both the master plan and the educational narrative, to preserve the city's conservation land, to seek the best design for a long-term solution, to maintain a connection to the community and consider walkability, and to encourage sustainability and energy conservation. Now, when Bill Clinton ran for president the first time, his campaign manager, Jim Carville's slogan was, "It's the economy, stupid." And I think if I had to take our presentation and condense it into a little catchy phrase, I'd say, it's the master plan and the educational narrative, stupid. Because we accepted the goals of the educational narrative, and we note that both the State Department of Education and the Joint Site Advisory Committee concluded that either site has the capability of satisfying the educational narrative. We also felt that whatever shape or form the building takes, whether it's a new building or it's a renovated building, it should be adaptable to meet new or modified teaching methods. For example, 15 years ago, no one had really thought of a middle school concept in Portsmouth. And who knows where we'll be 15 years from now. But regardless of where we are, whatever facility we have needs to be adaptable to those potentially changing needs. Now, in terms of the master plan, we first looked at the vision statement, which says, as you know by now, that Portsmouth should be a living, walkable city that preserves its history and that lives in balance with its natural resources. And we also looked at that part of the vision statement, which says that the master plan should be used consistently to evaluate ongoing municipal practices, private developments, and development of future policies. As far as preserving city's conservation land is concerned, the master plan says we should preserve and restore identified critical habitats and enhance wildlife corridors, and we should also explore opportunities to protect land adjacent to existing open spaces in order to create a connected network of greenways. In terms of long-term solutions, the master plan says that the citizens of Portsmouth made clear their preference for long-term solutions as opposed to short-term fixes. We also noted there's a growing movement across the country that favors rehabilitation of urban schools as opposed to creating sprawling outlying schools. As far as connectivity to the community is concerned, our group felt that certainly that renovating the middle school will promote the long-term connectivity and enhancement of the downtown area by keeping a unique landscape use in the heart of the downtown. As far as sustaining and encouraging sustainability and long-term energy conservation, once again, our master plan says we should encourage development that reuses and rehabilitates existing infrastructure while appropriate rather than requiring new infrastructure. Now, unlike the case with the educational narrative, when we applied the master plan criteria, we found the Parrott Avenue site met all of them, whereas the Sagamore Creek site met none of them. First of all, in terms of consistency with the master plan, new construction in the more isolated Sagamore Creek location is not at all in conformance with the master plan's vision statement because it will not promote Portsmouth as a livable, walkable city that preserves its history and lives in balance with its natural resources, whereas Parrott Avenue will. Preserving conservation land. Clearly, the 33 acres on Sagamore Creek does not meet this criterion, while redevelopment of the Parrott Avenue site does. Best design for long-term solution. The reuse of existing structures should be a high priority for the city. If no other options existed, then yes, the construction of a new school might be a viable option. However, as we know, another viable option does exist, and even the arguably biased team design plan agrees with that. We also believe the school board has not achieved an adequate understanding of what can be accomplished through the renovation of the existing middle school, and that the Parrott Avenue site can be better designed to more fully comport with its urban setting. We strongly feel that the development of the Parrott Avenue site should be directed by a group of firms of architects who are knowledgeable about specializing in the renovation of urban schools, and this may best be accomplished by seeking multiple proposals from top-notch firms. As far as connectivity to the community is concerned and walkability, obviously the Parrott Avenue site, as has been pointed out by other groups, is in a highly visible location near the center of town, close to the new library, close to city offices on Jenkins Avenue. The connection to the community is obvious. On the other hand, the Sagamore Creek site offers no such connections. The entrance from Route 1 requires you to make two 90-degree turns, snake around the high school baseball fields, climb a steep bedrock slope, and then pass through the old landfill, effectively isolating the school and the students from their community. In terms of sustainability, we believe that the renovation and reconstruction of the Parrott Avenue site, again, as has been pointed out by others, should follow the best national sustainable practices, especially the LEED practices, and we reiterate our support for the statement that has been made earlier that the Sagamore Avenue site seems to be categorically excluded from even applying for certification. In conclusion, we believe that the actual process of renovating the school at Parrott Avenue can be an educational process for students, teachers, and members of the community as a whole. It can demonstrate that wiser, imaginative uses of existing infrastructure can effectively counter sprawl, and that new is not always better. We understand the choice is difficult, but the best choice and the right choice, above all, is clear. The middle school on Parrott Avenue needs to be renovated, and it needs to remain a vibrant part of urban Portsmouth for the next 75 years, just as it has been for the past 75 years. Thank you.
He's going to be double checking for our PowerPoint. I'm Joy Page, and we are representing Group A this evening. We, much like all the other groups that have presented, or many of the groups that have presented, have come to the similar conclusion. I must say that after Wednesday evening, hearing all the groups present was the first time as we all came together and presented. I was very, very surprised to see such consensus across all, most of the 16 groups. I walked away from that meeting thinking, wow, am I missing something here, or is this really loud and clear that many of the citizens that are involved with this process believe that we need to take a look at the Parrott Avenue site a little stronger. We would like to say that when we started out our conversations, we agreed that with no PowerPoint here, I have to go from memory. We agreed that the Pierce Trust, or what is so-called Pierce Trust, is a non-issue, and we believe that it is because the city purchased that land outright in 1913, and Tony's going to address that.
Our PowerPoint presentation was really awesome. You're going to have to trust us on that. It was the best. I'm sorry, guys. We were trying to start the conversation, and a lot of people were talking about the Pierce land, this word, the Pierce land, these two words, and everybody's concerned about it. So we said, well, let's look into it. Some members of our group went and looked at the deed, and as I'm sure it's been passed around a lot, the deed says the land was purchased for $1, or it said it was $1 on the deed. So maybe that's where the concept of a gift came about. But it wasn't a gift. We went to the City Hall ledger for 1913. The Portsmouth paid $2,500 to the Pierce family for that land. So we said, well, $2,500 in 1913 for that land, was that fair market value? Maybe it was $2,500. It was really a gift for that value of land. So we looked at the tax assessment for 1910. Going from Court Street, Haymarket Square, back to Parrott Ave, including the mansion, the land value was $10,000. In 1950, just the land value alone was $4,000. 1950, $4,000. So $2,500 in 1913 sounds like fair market value. It was purchased. Other points. It was a really great presentation. I'm trying to think of my other points. That was probably the biggest one. Oddly enough, so there was a concept of gift, and people were saying, this is a gift, we don't want to take it. Oddly enough, the Sagamore Creek site was purchased with gifted funds from a National Park Service. So, so that was our starting point of the conversation. The other starting point was that both sites would meet the educational narrative as it's been stated previously. Thank you.
Okay. And our 5 criteria that our group came up with were preservation, community, accessibility, cost, and logistics. The one I want to spend most of the time on is preservation. It came up over and over and over again in our conversations. We not only want to preserve historic buildings, but we also want to preserve open space, and those are parts of Portsmouth that have been shown to be important too, because over the last since I don't know when the first one was, we found that Portsmouth is a city that preserves. As a matter of fact, in 1960 there was a decision to preserve the South Mill Pond. The Chamber of Commerce recommended to fill that in for a parking lot. And as we know right now, that is now South Mill Pond is now a park area. It's also adjacent to the Parrott Avenue site. As well, there was a decision to preserve 40 homes in the South End, which has now become Strawberry Bank. And that was at a time when they wanted to demolish the homes and build low-income housing, as was recommended by the federal government. There's also a decision to convert the former Portsmouth Hospital into efficient or high-end condominiums. And as you know, because we're sitting in this area now, that did not happen. It was preserved. We have an elderly housing over here, and we have this area that is being used by the city government. Also, there was a decision to adopt in New Hampshire. We were the first city to adopt historic standards. And again, over someone else's policy of the realtors not wanting to have historic districts because they felt that having a term historic district would then create the property values to go down. But as we know in Portsmouth, they've gone up. And also there was a time when they wanted to stop the beautification of Market Square by changing some things in the 1970s, and that did not happen. It's now a viable business community. So Portsmouth has a history of preserving, and we would like to see them preserve the Parrott Avenue site. As was stated earlier, this could be a top-notch educational facility. The facade could maintain its historic look, but the inside could be totally changed and be a highly efficient technical building. All our other sites have been mentioned, so I don't want to go into them, but we talk about accessibility. The cost is important, and given the figures that we had, the cost didn't look like it was that much different, but we also felt that there might have been some hidden costs that we weren't privy to or weren't thought of, or we didn't have the road costs into the building, as was mentioned before. And we also felt that opportunity costs need to be taken into consideration, because once you build a facility down at the Sagamore Creek site, you've lost the opportunity for that open space. It's gone forever. So our group recommends that we renovate the Parrott Avenue site, and maybe not call it renovate, but create a brand new school, because that's what it would be. It would be a brand new school. Lastly, I want to thank and express our appreciation from our group for this unique opportunity and for our right to participate in democracy. And we believe that creative ways to address current and future needs for the education of our middle school children can be devised through renovation of the current school. We further believe that imaginative thinking is called for. We are calling for the kind of thinking that will result in renewed investment in a school that retains its connection with our community and a continued commitment to the highly valued concept of sustainability. We believe that such an investment will be of greater lasting value financially now as well as into the future. So thank you.
Okay, I think I echo everybody around the table first in thanking everybody for their participation both tonight as well as obviously over an extended period of time. Also appreciate the time folks are putting in around the table and the time that I'm sure we will be putting in the relatively near future on this topic. I know that in prior discussion leading up to tonight as well as at the introduction tonight, we wanted to allow for some questions from folks around the table here, school board members and members of the City Council, with a couple of caveats. One is specific questions to specific groups. That is so that we don't have, hey, all 16 of you, could you give a 1-minute answer sort of thing. So if there are specific questions that anybody here has for clarification about anything you heard tonight, would like to ask a specific group, this would be a good time to do it. And let's see what we have. Councilor Penelakos.
Yes, I have a question from Mr. Tabor and Mr. Nukas.
Yes.
You, in telling us on the report that we have here, it says that letters went out to all households in the city. Was that 22,000 households?
I don't think there are 22,000 households in the city. I think there are 22,000 people. The mailers went out.
Well, maybe I'm wrong in the households.
Yeah, but John can tell you because John did it in Newington as well.
Yes, we purchased the most up-to-date list of every household in the city. We did not include businesses, but we did include Newington because they are part of the middle school.
And you did not have anybody respond from Gosling Meadows?
I couldn't tell you that without checking all the addresses.
I was just curious because we seem to have been told, which I never knew that we got into in most reports. It says that everyone that participated in this report was in the $106,000 income and the wealthy. So I was kind of wondering what you meant by that.
Yeah. Well, just so that this is orderly, if I think that we have a specific question that hopefully two gentlemen up could address specifically.
If you look in the report, Mitch Schuldman has the statistical portion, and we show how many people by each income segment. So it will show you how many people were in each segment.
But on your front page is what I was referring to.
Yeah. That's a figure that is like an estimated average. We used very broad-ranging groups. The income groups were 25,000 apart. So it's a very broad number. It's not an exact number. There's probably nobody in the room that earns $106,000. But overall, what we were trying to reflect is that basically the people that did participate seemed to be people with more education and a higher income.
And the reason I asked that because we have Gosling Meadows that has a lot of families there that are, well, we wouldn't say low income, but they're not of that wealth, and I wondered if they had been included in the study.
They absolutely had. And in addition to the mailing, we had advertisements in the newspaper through the schools. We sent out emails and notices so a lot of families with children in the schools get hit twice. John also cooperated by sending out a special newsletter in the community newsletter, which I believe goes out to 1,400 other households. So in the 9 years that I've been involved in study circles, this is by far the most extensive recruitment process we've had in terms of trying to reach out to everybody. We can reach out to them through mailings and advertisements. Whether they come or not is their choice.
Well, I was just curious because I didn't receive one at my household.
Okay.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. Other questions? Yes, Mitch.
Thank you. I just want to first say that before I was elected to the school board, one of the first things that I did was to participate in the last Portsmouth Listen Study Circle, which was the redistricting. So I know the process that you went through. I know how long it was. I know how difficult the conversations were. And I just want to say for myself that I really appreciate so many people participating and coming out. I think what would be helpful for me, actually, as much as many people don't like PowerPoint, would be to ask if the school board members can get a copy of the PowerPoint presentations because in many ways they were a great summation of everything that went through here. And I think as we look at what we need to be talking about, I think that would be helpful. So I would request that. So that's my question, if we can have a copy of that.
That's true. I guess we have all of them on the hard drive of the computer as it is, if I saw that right. So there's probably a way to do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
We'll get a disc for the superintendent.
That'd be fine. I'd
Okay.
appreciate that.
Thank you for the thought. I saw some other hands. Brendan, did you? Oh, sorry. Okay, other hands? Yes, Councilor Grasso.
Yes, I have a question for Group C. In your report, you mentioned that there would be room to put the 8th grade at the high school because there would be room for 500 students, and I'd like to defer to Dr. Lister to give you the facts on that because being on that building committee for over 6 years, I know we don't have that many empty rooms there.
I never said empty rooms. I said empty seats.
Okay, all right. But the implying that there was room for 500 students there, so I would like Dr. Lister to answer that, please.
I'll just answer by saying the capacity of the building could take more students than what are there now. It was built for more than what is there presently. The issue is that if they're 8th graders and the 8th grade needed to come to the high school and they required 10 classrooms, there are not 10 classrooms for 8th graders to come to the high school. If they were 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, that would be different because they'd be integrated into classes that already exist. But because they're 8th graders, and the same issue is with the 6th graders that I heard before about going to the elementary, there aren't several 6th grade classrooms available in any one of the elementary schools.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Dwyer.
This is a question. I know a couple of groups talked about the reconfiguration of Parrott Avenue or the closing off of Parrott Avenue, and I know at least Group H mentioned that, and I'd be interested in any group that talked about that actually saying a little bit more about what your intentions were in terms of use of Parrott Avenue, where you would dead end and how you would handle traffic, because that seemed important to a couple of groups, and getting enough space to be able to actually have a footprint that would accommodate a school there.
I know Councilor mentioned Group H, and there may be others, but
I think there may have been others.
Yeah, perhaps as a jumping off point.
Hi, I'm Judy Howard.
and I'm a member of Group H, and one of the things that we talked about, was where the middle school, where the building, the footprint of the building, if we were to take it down and close off the street from Rogers, and where the near the other end where the parking lot is, and create fields there, more playing fields, then the buses could come down Rogers and drop off, and there wouldn't be any traffic in front of the school because it gets closed off when all the cars are parked on either side. And it's pretty hard to negotiate, especially now with the library traffic. So that if the people were coming from Richards to go to the library and coming from Rogers to go to the middle school, and then having the rest of Parrott Ave be available down the courthouse to the parking lot. And the other thing that we had thought of was putting a parking garage where the parking lot is so that there would be more parking for everybody, so that the town and the teachers and the courthouse, and that there would just be more parking available. And then the kids would have more safety in front of the school, and it would be more green, and possibly get some playing fields use out of it, or extending the playing fields out over to the municipal, to the city, where the tennis courts are. And the kids could use those fields during the day, and the rest of because mostly they're used by the rest of the town in the summertime when school is out. So that was one of the ideas that our group had come up with. And again, our group had 7 people who wanted to keep the middle school and 2 who didn't. So I just wanted to clarify that. Does that answer?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you, Mayor. Group K. Okay. They were the only ones who recommended possibly this go to a referendum vote. It was such a critical area, and there was such a bonding involved that I like to know how much discussion they had on that issue of going to a referendum vote at the next civic election.
My name is Nancy Emerson. It was Tom Hindle who gave our report, and he had to leave because he had another appointment. We had a lot of discussion over a referendum, and one of the discussions we had was centered around various referendum questions. Sorry, I'll try to get into your view. One of which was referendum on whether we even needed a new middle school. Another part of it was whether this resident should be given the choice of the 2 sites. And then the other one was just a referendum, more or less, we thought this was less strident or less aggressive maybe, but we wanted to ensure that the city and the school board used sound, fiscal, fiduciary matters and got multiple bids and got appropriate bids, like the National Historic Society, which has, identified public schools, older public schools, as one of the endangered buildings in the country as far as historic resources go. So we would really like that, though we're not aware of that kind of referendum being held in this city. We didn't know what it had done. But we really felt that the people needed to have input, and that the people felt that the elected officials had an obligation to listen to the people and honor their requests.
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, let me go to Brendan and then Mitch.
My question's more for the city manager, because what I noticed a lot of groups talking about were different ideas outside of what we've talked about, as far as a parking structure near what I call the Citizens Bank lot that's blocked off for teachers during the school year, or moving the Senior Citizen Center. So how do we as a school board look at these alternative ideas in a feasible way with you as the city council, so we work in tandem, so that way we're not talking about ideas that aren't plausible, and at the same time moving the discussion forward, I guess.
If I might, Your Honor?
Sure.
I think probably the most important thing for you as the board should go back after hearing these presentations, deliberate, and come up with a list of questions and ideas that have been generated from this discussion, and so that I could work with Dr. Lister, and let's say, for example, hypothetically, it's determined that you want to go to Parrott Avenue and renovate there, and there might be certain things that have to happen on Parrott Avenue, not specifically to the Pierce Trust, but maybe going, as one group said, more towards Rogers and the Senior Center. Clearly, if you articulate that in a bunch of questions, I can then approach the various entities that might have interest in that and get back to you, and then you'll have the basis of information to at least make a decision. Clearly, anything that would entail finances or creation of another parking garage, I could give you my best answer relative to the costs and the restrictions that might be on the various sites, but that would be a policy decision of the City Council. So if in the event that you sent it back to the City Council with a recommendation, I think you need to list what would be required to be at that location so the City Council clearly understands what they're voting on. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Before we go to Mitch, I think there,
I just want to make a statement that the school board will be meeting tomorrow for its first work session in over 2 months in regards to the middle school. So we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow. It's an open meeting. It's a work session tomorrow night.
And if I might, just city staff, if given enough advance notice, I can make people available, but I would appreciate if we could, once you start into this, if you start compiling your questions so that we can work to get you some answers if we can.
Okay, Mitch.
Just a quick one. I wanted to follow up on that question of the referendum, because I wasn't sure I understood what one of the things that you said. In your group, were you saying that there were people in the group who wanted to put on the referendum whether, in fact, the city even needs a new middle school?
Yes.
In other words, people thought the current one was acceptable and okay?
No, we did not feel that the current one was acceptable and okay.
Okay.
But we felt that there didn't appear to be, and we certainly feel that Parrott Avenue needs to be renovated.
Oh.
It does need to be renovated.
Okay.
But we don't feel that we necessarily need it to be a middle school. We would like you to look at different grade configurations or a concept of maybe having a specialty school like an arts and sciences school or a Spanish immersion school. And, these options are given to many other communities throughout the country, and there's just been absolutely no discussion of anything other than ba-boom, 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 the same old thing that we've been doing. The middle school concept is 50 years old, and having them in that building is 50 years old. As someone pointed out earlier, the middle school concept can be used in any grade configuration. And we just felt that given the existing buildings and the existing property in the city and the existing population, for example, Parrott Avenue has a capacity of 700, and there are only 500 students in there. So again, and this is according to results from a study that was commissioned by the school board. It seemed to us that there had not been any creative thinking or thought into how to deal with this problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Counselor Panalakos.
Yes, we had two things I'd like to mention. We had people speak about the lead and the documents they have that say that a middle school cannot be built on that piece of land. Would we be able to have a copy of that? And also, we were told that the land trust was bought. Could we also have a copy of that?
So the first is documentation of whether you can be a lead certified.
Both of the things that were said of it.
Yep.
From the study committee, not from the city manager. I believe the study committee told us these and that they should bring the documentations to us.
Okay, pretty specific question. And those groups that worked on that, not for this evening, but, oh.
Do you want me to bring it up there, the documentation?
Yes, we'd like it.
Wow, that's real time right there. That's pretty good.
Way ahead of us. Right on the bar.
Why don't you bring it over here, Tony, so I can give it to the rest of the council, typically so that I can distribute it to them, okay?
Separate it out.
Okay, sure,
All
no
right.
problem. I'll distribute it. What I'll do is, when you give it to me, I'll send it out to everybody.
Thanks, John.
Very good. Okay, see a few hands here. The assistant mayor, and just to get the cue, did I see any other hands? All right, Assistant Mayor Ferrani.
This is embarrassing. I've been, first of all, thank you all. I echo the comments of my colleagues up here. I have been paging through furiously to look at my notes, and I sure enough can't find it. But one group did say, most seem to favor, obviously, Parrot Ave, but there was one group that talked quite a bit about other sites, and it was probably within the first 5, and I can't remember which of you it was. If anyone would own up to that one, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that and just what the group process thinking was, if indeed I heard it correctly.
I think Group E had some.
The commentary was that these 2 sites alone were not sufficient due diligence and that additional sites should be looked at, and that was discussed by the group.
It might have been I. Does that ring a bell for anybody else?
Maybe it was Group I.
Might have been Group I.
Well, Group E, I think.
it was.
Yeah.
But it's the only group that I heard that from, so.
I believe Group E had an opportunity, and they didn't get into specifics, but they had an opportunity section.
That's who it was.
Is it E?
It was Eric.
No, it wasn't me.
I was in Group E, and we did
That was Group E.
option called Opportunity, but it wasn't concerning other sites. You did it? Our Opportunity was looking at other grade configurations. So, sorry, wrong group.
Okay.
Group C.
Last call. Any
It
group?
was a group that said something about only sites being larger than 28 acres.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
That was your group, okay.
There we go.
Okay, which group was that?
Group G.
G, okay. The only letter we didn't say. All right.
When we looked at the site plans, the map that we got on the city website, we noticed that it said every piece said sites greater than 28 acres, and it went through those and looked at them as whether they were owned by the city, whether they were buildable, and we thought, wow, the Parrot Avenue site isn't 28 acres. There's no way. I'm not really good with spatial relations, but it's not 28 acres. So we thought instead, why don't we look at what the Parrot Avenue site is? If we can build a middle school there, let's start at that level and move up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For all the help.
All right. Yes.
I have a question going back to John Tabor and Jim Nukas in regards to the front part. Two questions, actually. First question is to follow up on a little bit of what Councilor Penelakis asked. Number of non-residents from Portsmouth or Newington that participated in this survey, or in the study circles. Number of none?
0.
So if we went through the list of all names, they would all be Portsmouth residents, that's correct?
Except some high schools.
Exactly.
There were some high school students from Greenland.
Okay. Second one is I need a clarification, because when we went last Monday to prepare for this, we were at 107 that had finished the study circles with everybody, and then tonight we jumped back to 135. You know, that's a fairly significant number difference. Can you give us a reason why that's so different tonight?
107 people answered the survey, the evaluation form at the end of the process. 135 made it through. We learned that when we asked each of the facilitators to take a head count at the end. And the reason I gave you a new summary when you arrived tonight was to correct that fact.
Okay, so then there was, in non-participation of the final survey, less than 32% participated, or 32% did not participate. Yes. If you do the math, you said 107 people did the survey. Is that correct?
Yes.
32. So that would be about 32% did not participate in taking the final survey, correct?
They didn't fill out the survey. That doesn't mean they didn't participate in the group.
I didn't say that. They
Yeah.
did not participate
That's
in
correct.
the final survey.
Yeah.
Okay, so 30.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, let's. I want to keep it to the one asking the question. and the
Again, I
one
want to
being
make
asked
sure
to answer
that's
it.
correct.
It was a 50-question form that people were asked to fill out at the last session, at the end of their last session. It was geared towards evaluating the process and getting demographic information, not geared towards dealing with the criteria or any of the substantive issues.
Well, I think that goes to what Councilor Penelakis asked, is that 106 medium income could be greatly skewed because there are, again, approximately 60 odd that did not participate in that,
Yeah,
correct?
no question. We were trying to use those figures to give you a good faith estimate of what we thought the demographics looked like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, unless there's anything else super pressing, as we go past the 3-hour mark this evening, may be as good a place as any to end the evening and to, again, remind folks of the process. The dates are not specific yet. They're not set in stone. The school board gets the next bite at the apple, so to speak, in terms of selection of a site. The city council eventually gets to give a thumbs up or down, effectively, on the bonding for that site. So those are the next 2 steps in that order. And please keep your eyes open and ears open. And really appreciate you taking the time tonight. Thanks very much.